Hey guys, it's the WalterFootball.com After Dark show for December 11, 2024. We're going to be doing the Week 15 NFL picks against the spread for the 2024 NFL season. Before we intro our co-host for tonight, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. As you can see, I am wearing a Walter football shirt. It is a light blue shirt that is a part of our winter collection here. So you can get these shirts for about 25% off. We had a 30% off sale last week, but 25% is still good. I mean, $15 to $18 for most of these shirts. I think that's a pretty sweet deal. I mean, these are high quality shirts that have lasted me years, and it's really all I wear. So, you can get these and really help out the show. You can also go to Amazon and buy my books. Jerks of the College Years is my most recent book, where I went to Penn State for 6 years, and I ran into a lot of people that I made fun of. So you can read all about that here in my latest book. Also, I wrote about how the 2020 MVP was stolen, which is how Brett Favre tried to sabotage Aaron Rodgers. So if you want to read about that expose that I wrote, you can buy this book as well. Or super chats, super stickers. That's the best way. I always say that YouTube ads pay nothing, and you guys really keep the show going here with these super chats. Had some great ones recently from Slew, John Sanders, Drofa Show, Cam McEagle, Jesse Cintron. You guys have been so helpful with your contributions. Like I can't thank you enough for that. And really, it just keeps the show going. So any further contributions would really be welcome. All right, so we are joined by Evan Daniel once again. Evan, how are you? And how was your Week 14? Even I know that because we just talked about it, but for the audience, let us know.
I'm good. Thanks for having me again. Week 14 was tough. Contest-wise, really, really bad. We were talking before that a couple of these games, more than half of these games, are really just like the wrong side is covering. Like throughout the game, you have one team, and then maybe in the last 4 minutes, it completely flips. You know, the Bengals, Cowboys last night. The Browns, well, I thought earlier the Browns were in the game. Obviously, they were not. The Tampa Raider game, I was on the Raiders. That was 14-13, pretty much the entire game. And then all of a sudden, they're getting blown out. So, and then, of course, where do you have the number? You know, Miami contest-wise was -5.5. I was on the Jets side last week. The line closed 6.5. So if you had plus 6.5, you're good. But if you're on -5.5, plus 5.5, you somehow lost. Somehow the Jets found a way to lose and not cover. So, just a lot of these games not falling the right way. But there's a lot of different ways to attack the NFL. I hit another Monday Night Football weekly FanDuel special last night. It's like the fourth time that I've hit that. So there's a lot of ways to attack the NFL. And, of course, live in-game betting, taking advantage of game flow is really, I think, the best way to beat a lot of sports, whether it's NBA, college basketball, football, live betting. Find the team that's behind. A lot of times you have the comeback. You have that witch-and-hour flip, and that offers a lot of value where the lines now are – I mean, we'll talk soon. There's a lot of games where the lines have already moved against a team that I like. So we'll get to that. But otherwise, from a contest perspective, really one of the worst weeks ever. And hopefully this week we'll turn it around.
I mean, you mentioned that like the wrong side has been covering in a lot of these games, and it started last Monday night with the Broncos Browns game, where it looked like the Browns were a lock to cover, and then of course Jameis Winston threw that second pick six, and then threw an interception when he could have gotten the backdoor touchdown at the end. I think that started this entire madness. You mentioned the games. I think the two most frustrating games for me were Saints-Giants, where the Saints were up 14-3. The Giants had nothing going on offensively the whole game. I think Drew Lock started 0 of 7 or 0 of 8. Like he couldn't complete any passes. And then it's the penultimate offensive drive of the game for the Giants. They sack Drew Lock. It's 3rd and 18, and he somehow gets out of it including a 4th and 10. And then he hits a deep pass to Neighbors, and then there's a touchdown, which like they don't show on replay. It's just like they magically set as a touchdown. And then the 2-point conversion bounces into the receiver's hands after it's deflected at the line of scrimmage. It was like one of the most frustrating sequences like I can remember. And then as you said, the Bengals Cowboys game, like that block punt just kept trickling forward. It was like the wind blew it. There's no wind in the stadium, but like just like the wind kept blowing it toward Cincinnati, toward Dallas's end zone, I should say. And then Cincinnati, of course, recovered it. You mentioned before we start recording that the players didn't even know the rules. So it was just a comedy of errors, just in those couple of games. And then, I can't say it was all bad luck because, we definitely had the wrong side in the Bears 49ers game. Like that was a disaster. I jumped off Tampa to go on Kansas City, which turned out to be a huge error as well. So there were definitely bad calls on my part, but there's bad luck as well. So when you have bad calls and bad luck, you're going to have a terrible week. So I didn't have a great week either. I salvaged the push in the Super Contest with the Dolphins, luckily, and it was a win in the circle actually. But otherwise, it was a pretty rough week. But it's kind of frustrating because week 13 it hit everything, and then week 14 just gave it all back. So hopefully we take everything back week 15. I like this card a lot more. I remember you said last week that you didn't like the card at all. Like, how do you feel about the card before?
Last week I didn't like any games. Zero. There was not one game that I thought I would bet at the lines that were given. This week I like the games a lot more. There's probably 6 or 7 games that I've highlighted to really look into and think about, and certainly seeing it better. But it's really a lesson. I mean, the lines are so tight. Dolphins minus 5.5 closes 6.5, lands on 6. Now, that just shows you how important it is to get the best number. First of all, make sure you get the right number. And you'll see this week, I mean, there's a bunch of games, not to tease any game in particular ahead, but there's a bunch of games that have moved significantly. It's like, oh, it's not a big deal. It went from 6 to 4.5. No, it's a big deal. 5.5 to 6.5 is a big deal. Obviously, we know 2.5, 3, 3.5, sure. But anywhere you go, these games, the lines are so tight, and there's so much luck involved late that, and historically I've always said, I like the dog because of that. I always lean towards an underdog because it's hard to win a football game. It's certainly hard to win a football game by a margin. This year, it just seems like the favorites are just continue to dominate the lines every single week. It's been favorites, and overs. But it's like I've never seen a year where the public has done so well. I'm in weekly pools where I'm barely 500. I think I'm 105 and 103 in one of my pools. That adds a half a point to every game. And I'm like in the bottom quartile of the picks. Like so many people are 55, 60%. That makes no sense. But that's the way it is this year. So many favorites, and the books haven't adjusted enough yet.
Yeah, who's winning is the lady in the office pool takes the team based on the mascots. It feels like one of those kind of years.
Exactly.
Exactly right. So, well, hopefully things regress to the mean here, or if they don't, it surely will next year. But you're right. I mean, there's certainly a number of games that have moved already. It's kind of astonishing, and it was so frustrating to get the worst number in that Dolphins Jets game because I thought the line was going to keep dropping because the sharps were on the Jets once again, and I thought, hey, maybe we'll get 5 or 4.5 by kickoff, and it ricocheted it went from 6.5 to 5.5 back up to 6.5, and I just got caught off guard on that on Sunday morning. I was
it's funny. Last week when we talked, I went into the call thinking the Jets are like my number one team, and it just made no sense. Like I made the line 3, and you made a lot of good points. Like everyone thinks the Jets are better than what they are. You called them a falling knife, and you made a very good, compelling argument. I'm like, you know what? He's right. Like I can't take the Jets plus 5.5, and I didn't because you made a good argument. But the truth is that was the right side the entire game, and then of course it lost. So, go figure. I mean, but that's what happens this entire year when you're betting underdogs and picking the dogs, especially the ones who are really bad. You have to come to expect those outcomes at the end of these games.
Yep. All right, let's get into these games here. We start with Rams at 49ers on Thursday night. Very compelling game here. I mean, this is basically almost loser goes home. Maybe not for the Rams, but for 49ers especially. They lose this, they're down to 6-8. So you got to think that they're going to be going all out here. And it was nice to see them bounce back. Well, not really because we bet on the Bears, but if you take that away, they finally rebounded and looked good after getting blown out twice. And I do like them here. If they blow a lead again, like they could still cover technically if they win by 3. And they had a huge lead against the Rams the first time they played them. Now that was without Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, but the Niners have owned the Rams throughout the years. The Niners attack the middle of the field very well. The Rams can't defend the middle of the field, so it's a good matchup historically for San Francisco. And I also like that the Niners have had just a big rest advantage. Now, they both play Sundays. You might be like, what are you talking about? The Niners were able to sit their starters in the fourth quarter, whereas the Rams had to hold on for dear life. And they played so many more snaps than the Niners did. They played, if you combine offense and defense, they played about 40 more snaps than the 49ers starters did. It's almost a half more of action on 3 days rest. Like it just seems like such a big edge here for San Francisco. And I like that we're getting good line value. The advanced spread was 3, it's down to 2.5. So half a point, okay, maybe you think not a big deal, but you get the ultimate key number of 3 with San Francisco here. So I like the Niners. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this because you are a Niners fan. So what do you think about this game?
Yeah. So again, going back to the point that we don't trust the Niners because they don't hold on to leads. But here's the thing in this game. We've said about the Rams, I said several weeks in a row how bad they were on third down. I think I quoted they were 7 for 35 in the prior 4 games to last week. Last week, at one point, they were 11 for 12 on third down, the Rams. Now, they were obviously unbelievable, putting up 40-plus points. Maybe the Bills are a little flat, coming off a divisional clincher. Nevertheless, the Rams in the game were 11 for 15 on third down, and at one point, like I said, 11 for 12. The Niners are not very good on third down defense, and that's going to be the key in the game, is getting the Rams off the field on those third downs. Another thing we saw last week from the Rams, which we like to see from coaches who are good coaches, McVay being one of them, is aggressiveness. Whether it's fourth downs, at the end of the game, the Rams are up by 3, and they went for fourth down. And they got a touchdown. They missed the extra points. They had a 9-point lead, but the game was over basically when they took that 9-point lead instead of a team that kicks a field goal to possibly go up by 6. Who kicks a field goal to go up by 6? Kyle Shanahan. Yeah. So I don't trust the coaching situation, although Shanahan has really dominated this matchup. That kind of tells you that, okay, the Niners have the edge there. The Niners are in a must-win situation. You mentioned the rest factor. I'd like to see if they get Trent Williams back. That's huge. Bosa as well. It was nice to see Hufanga back last week. It makes the secondary a lot better. I don't know, regardless of Hufanga or not, who's going to stop Puka and Cooper Kupp the way they're playing right now. But to me, it really comes down to coaching and aggressiveness. And when they make those decisions to go for fourth down and 5, or I think it was a 4th and 5 or a 4th and 6 late in that game, can you execute? So the first is, do I go for it or not? And then do I execute? The Niners don't have a good kicker. He's been terrible this year. And I don't think they're going for it in those situations. So it's hard to trust a team like that, although they do historically have this edge. So I do like the line value. I do know some groups that were on the Rams +3 last week and now are on the Niners -2.5. So again, talking about, those slight tiny margins. If you like the Niners, make sure you're at 2.5, because at 3, I would probably take the Rams. At 2.5, I like to think that the season's not over for the Niners. Win this game, and every game is a playoff game. Every game they have a shot. So I'm going to lean to the Niners, but I very much worry about the coaching decisions, especially with a lead late in the game. And I'd like to check the injury report. I think Trent Williams is probably the most valuable player on the team. If he's not there, I really worry about the line, the run game. They're down to like a 4th-string running back right now. But if Trent is there and Bosa is back, then maybe we got a shot. Definitely not a contest pick. I would not come close to betting or picking this game, as far as making a bet on it.
Even if it was on Sunday, or obviously it's a Thursday?
Yeah, even if it were Sunday, I probably wouldn't play this game. I think there's much better games on the card, but I just think this game is one. This is a playoff game. Right. And we'll see. There's a couple of games that are great games that are kind of playoff-ish games. I mean, obviously Buffalo is not a playoff game. It's 2 playoff teams. But I don't think there's a real edge in laying 2.5 with the Niners. Because I do think, like I said, if they're up by 7, or if they're up by 10, you're good. But if they're up by 7 late in the game or 3 late in the game, I don't trust them to hold on. And if they're up by 3 with the ball, I really don't trust that they're going to make the aggressive enough correct decisions to keep the ball or go for fourth downs or settle for a late field goal or a long field goal and give the Rams a chance. And we've seen time and time again that that's not the way to win games. So I worry about that. And therefore, I wouldn't bet the team. But I pick them because they're in a must-win situation and because historically they have the edge. But I do worry about the coaching.
Joe for show, $4.99 super chat. Thank you so much, Joe for show. Player props for this game. He's thinking Jennings yards, but it's a 68.5. Jennings killed the Rams.
He was great last night. Remember, Kittle didn't play in that game.
Right.
So he was their only real target in that game, but he's really become their go-to target for sure. Debo's not getting ball downfield. Mm-hmm. He's getting the ball in short yard situations. Juwan has been the third down guy. He's definitely getting the target share. I would look towards Kittle as well.
Yeah.
I do like Jennings at 68.5 because he's probably getting 8 to 10 targets in this game. He's gotten 8 to 10 targets pretty much in every game. So I do like that 68.5. But remember, he had a big game, but Kittle was out. Also, Puka and Cup were also out in that game. Niners blew that game. That was their first of 3 divisional blown leads. But that's not a bad number, 68.5.
Yeah, I like Kittle. You mentioned Kittle as well. His receiving number is 58.5. Seems very doable, especially against the Rams defense that struggles against tight ends. For Deebo, you mentioned Deebo Samuel. I would take him under. He just doesn't seem healthy. So I don't think he's going to get there. 48.5 is not great, but if I had to choose, I would go under there.
This is another. Sorry to cut you off. This is another great game to bet in game because if the Niners take a lead, you'll get great value on the Rams. That's a given. And also, you'll see early on where Stafford has struggled this year is where he's taken pressure up the middle. The Niners don't really have much of a pass rush up the middle. Their pass rush is coming on the outside from Bosa. So if he's taking pressure up the middle with Avila, who's been terrible at guard since he came back from injury, that's where Stafford, when you get him off of his spot, he has not been good. Mm-hmm. It's when they get him out in motion, when they have Kupp and Puka in motion going to the sidelines and then Stafford going out towards right or left. That's where Stafford's had a ton of success this year. But it's when he's kept clean, in the pocket. When the Niners historically have dominated the Rams, they've dominated the line. Mm-hmm. So that's something to note early in the game if you're watching and they're not getting to Stafford, they're not touching him. Stafford's going to pick them apart. Mm-hmm. So that's another in-game angle to look for.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Rushing yards, there's no prop for the Niner running back because we don't know if Guerrero is going to play yet.
I don't think Guerrero's going to play.
Okay.
If Patrick Taylor, I think it is.
Patrick Taylor, yeah. I like Patrick Taylor's over rushing yards. Obviously depends what the number is, but if it's not too high, I like it because the Rams have been weaker against the run lately. Now, if Guerrero plays, I also like it, provided it's not too high. And then I pointed this out to you much earlier in the season. You can bet the Niners kicker over 1.5 field goals because the Niners always kick field goals in the red zone. Now, I know that Moody missed some kicks against the Buccaneers, but he's been not as bad in other games. So I think
that's a great bet. That's a great bet. I think I've told you a few times, like, oh shoot, I forgot. That's really a strong bet.
Yeah. So those are a few. Unfortunately, you can't use the Moody kick in single game parlay. I think you can on BetMGM, but you can't on most books. And BetMGM sucks for single game parlays. Their odds for that are just so bad unless you're getting a boost. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, we both agree on Jennings and Kittle and Moody, and then the running back. You didn't say anything about the running back. Do you like the running backs over? Obviously, it depends what the number is, but
again, I love to play those in game. Halftime, same game parlays. You can find the usage rate, see the situation of the game. There's a lot more value playing that at halftime than pregame because the problem with the Shanahan system, you don't know who's playing running back.
Right.
Randall could play. He might not be so healthy. Maybe he plays sparingly. I wouldn't bet any single running back over. If they find themselves behind, you're dead in the water, and you don't know who's going to play. I mean, Mike Shannon used to was it Mike Anderson one year, and it's like you don't know who's playing running back.
Orlando's Gary, yeah.
So I wouldn't lean before the game to a running back total.
Jennings over receptions 5.5. I think that goes.
I'd rather play the yards.
Yeah, me too. What if it rains? I think it's gonna be. I didn't see any rain in the forecast, but you got to think it's the Niners with their running game because the Rams throw so much. Plus, the Rams are a dome team. So, all right, let's get to the next team here. It is the Redskins at the Saints. Redskins are favored by 7. And obviously there's a big difference between this and the advanced spread, which was Redskins -3 because Derek Carr was still playing. Now Derek Carr has been ruled out, and it's going to be either Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler. I assume it's going to be Haener because he came in for Carr at the end of the game, but I guess you never know. Either way, I don't think it matters. The Redskins have been very dominant against these terrible quarterbacks, and not a surprise because usually top 12 defenses, like the top third in the NFL defensively, they tend to play really well against these like bad backup quarterbacks. And the Redskins are 3-1 straight up and against the spread this year against these bad backup quarterbacks. Their only loss was to Cooper Rush, where I think they just had a huge letdown. Plus, Jaden Daniels wasn't healthy for that game. And I pointed my theory about that game because I remember we were both heavily on the Redskins, and we were surprised that Dallas won outright. I thought that they watched the Redskins had a watch party on Monday night when they watched Dallas, because that was their next opponent, against the Texans. They're probably like laughing the whole time at Dallas's expense, and they're like, we could beat this team, and they just showed up and they just didn't, they thought they're gonna win and they just didn't. Plus, Dallas just released the ball so quickly in that game, like they didn't give any chance for that pass rush to get to Cooper Rush. But the Saints are just a disaster. Like they've had so many injuries. Like enough's enough here. Like if they still had like Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, they could maybe get by here and score some points. But like, who's Haener going to throw to? Like Marcus Valdes-Scantling, like Kevin Austin. Like there's not Taysom Hill's not even there anymore. It's just Alvin Kamara. So I think Washington wins this one pretty easily. The only thing I don't like is that they're coming off a blowout win prior to the bye. But I still think that at 8-5, I think they want to make sure that they can make the playoffs here. So I think it's okay to take him here against just dreadful Saints team that I don't think is going to win any other games coming up for the rest of the year. So I like Washington quite a bit. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, we're in agreement. I like Washington a lot also. Interestingly, the line came down. This line was 7.5, and it's now 7. Washington, here's the problem with Washington. They're off the bye and a blowout win. I think we've said this a few times. I don't like teams that are coming off byes with blowout wins. And there seems to be like some of a mental letdown throughout the off week. Saints are off of a pathetic win. I mean, they held on with the block short field goal at the buzzer. They had 33 carries against the Giants for 92 yards. That's under 3 yards per carry against the Giants defense, which is one of the worst run defenses in the league. Now, Washington is not a great run defense, but they're certainly getting better. Also, Lattimore is coming back in this game. So now this is his first game against his old team. I don't know that Lattimore is so great, and certainly you don't really need him in this game when there's no quarterback to throw the ball. But I think that he gives kind of a jolt of energy to the team defensively. So just his presence there could be good. Obviously, now there's no real threat of downfield passing without Carr. So I think they can stack the box and really kind of focus in on Kamara, which is the only real weapon. No Taysom Hill, no downfield threat, no quarterback. But again, off the blowout win, Philly's on deck. Maybe because they see a backup quarterback in the game, there's somewhat of a mental letdown. Like, we're going to beat this team easily and kind of cakewalk through the game. We also saw what happened with the Saints defense when they didn't have a quarterback a couple of times earlier this year. They gave up 110 points to Tampa, Denver, and the Chargers. So it's like the defense knows that the offense is horrible, and they just don't show up. So if that's going to be the case, then even if Washington doesn't show up, they're still going to put up 30+. Or high 20s at least, and I just don't see how the Saints score in this game. So we saw earlier this year, if your team doesn't have an NFL quarterback, and Haener and Rattler, neither of them are NFL quarterbacks, for me it's Washington or pass. At 7, I might actually consider taking Washington. I still think this line should be more than 7, and I'm a little surprised that it came down because I made it 7.5 to 9, somewhere in that ballpark. So at 7, I highlighted Washington as a possible pick. And we'll see where this line comes out. But 7 is definitely a possibility. Just worry about there's not an NFL roster on the other side of the field. Do we really have to try? And Philly's next. So the look ahead, the letdown potential, not a great spot, but I certainly lean Washington.
The look ahead would bother me if they just hadn't lost to Dallas recently. I feel like they already had their look ahead loss. Are they going to have that again? Like maybe, but I don't know. I like so soon after that, I think they're probably going to be more focused than they normally would be. Like had they beaten Dallas, I think I'd be more worried about it. So anyway, we move on to Dolphins and Texans. This line is Texans -3, which is up half a point from the event spread. So we do get some value now, and it's like 3 -105. But still, we get. I feel like we get the Texans we get the Dolphins with some value here from 2.5 to 3. Now we know this Dolphins team, they beat the bad teams and they lose to the good teams. But like, what is Houston really? I mean, the record says 8-5. So it's like, that's a good team, right? Like 8-5 should be good. But then, they lose to Tennessee. They almost lose to Jacksonville. So that means they're a bad team. Like, so I don't know, like how the Dolphins handle mediocre teams. I feel like they could have a good chance in this game. I actually like their matchup against Houston's defense because I looked up the missed tackle rate for the Texans, which I think is important against the Dolphins because the Dolphins, they've gone from just going bombs away to Hill and Waddle every snap to get the ball quickly to Achane or Jonnu Smith or sometimes Hill now, and just let them do all the work, which they should have done when Tua was out, and they didn't for some reason. But now they're doing that. And so whenever they go against a defense that can't tackle, I have interest. The Texans are third in the NFL in missed tackles. So I think that bodes well here for Miami. And like I said, we get decent line value here. And the Texans, like I said, they've had some dreadful results recently. Now, I think they can play better. They have good personnel. They have C.J. Stroud. Nico Collins should be 100% now. Tank Dell, his health will improve. Joe Mixon's great. Tunsil's been awful this year, but he's still formerly a great tackle. So maybe he'll improve as the season comes to an end. So I talked about Houston last week as like a Super Bowl sleeper if you can get them at a great number because they do have talent and they could be like the Cardinals from 2008. But we have seen no evidence that they could play at that level yet. So, or at least it's not recently. So I like Miami here at +3. So who do you like in this game?
I like Houston, and this is one of those games again where there's two spreads right now. So if you like Houston, you could take 2.5, and if you like Miami, you could play 3. Now you said you're not sure if they're a good team. Where do you have Houston in your power rankings?
Let's see. I have Houston number 15, so average.
All right, so you have them average. So I have them number 9.
Okay.
I do not agree that they're an average team. I think they're a good team. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender right now. They're kind of right outside of that little 6-7 team bubble, call it. So they're not quite a Super Bowl contender, but they're definitely a good team. Yes, they've had some hiccups, but they've also, as far as defense, I know you talk about the missed tackles. They held Josh Allen this year to his worst game. He was 9 for 30 in that game. He had a PFF grade in that game of 48. That would put him like worst in the league right now. They certainly have defensive capabilities. The one thing I would say about Houston is they've blown a lot of games, including that Buffalo game. They were up 20-3 in that Buffalo game, blew it, and then had to win 23-20 on a walk-off 59-yard field goal. They've blown a bunch of games. They led big against Jacksonville. They were never in doubt of losing the game, really. And then, of course, only won by 3. So that would be my concern in this game is that they're up 10, 14, 13, 14 points. And then next thing you know, it's a tie game or Miami's down by 10 and they're driving. Also, the Houston's off the bye in the win. So another factor there, it's certainly not a must-win game. So the motivation for Houston is certainly not quite as much as Miami's side. But I think Houston's a good team. And I know what Miami does against good teams. They don't beat good teams. Now, they beat the Rams, who I do think are a good team. So that was an interesting – we'll give the Rams – we'll give Miami credit for that one time they won against an above 500 potential playoff team. Even if the Rams don't make the playoffs, I still think they're in that realm of playoff caliber. Now, I'm concerned about Miami. They were awful last week. McDaniels was weird in the game. On fourth down specifically, it was like there was no consistency. In the second drive of the game, it's 4th and 1 at 21. Historically, he always goes for that. He kicks a field.
I was so shocked by that.
For a third drive, it's 4th and 4, so it's not 4th and 1, but it's 4th and 4 to 6, and he kicked another field goal.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they're down. First drive of the second half, they're down 20-15. It's 4th and 3 at the Jets' 48, and he punts. He did go for it later in the game when they're down by 8. The fourth quarter, you have to go for it, and he got it. And then, of course, he got 2-point conversion. So he left points on the table just by being weird in the game with his lack of consistency, and that's not like him. In the past, he's always been aggressive going for it. So I don't like what I'm seeing from their defense. Aaron Rodgers, 300-plus yards. The guy's got a torn MCL. He's got ankle issues. He's got leg issues. He's got age issues. And he's putting up 300 yards passing. The only reason Miami won that game is because the Jets mangled the clock late in the game. Like, the Jets have the ball. They're in field goal range, and they're going backwards. They run the ball on a weird pitch for a loss of 6. Then Rodgers, instead of running the ball, Rodgers is throwing. He takes a sack. Obviously they butchered the kickoff coverage, leading to Miami having an easier shot at the field goal. And then in overtime, everything is quick and short. The wide receiver screens, he's throwing bubble screens to Jonnu Smith. That's pretty much their offense in overtime. There's really nothing downfield. So I'm not impressed with Miami. I still have them as either an average or slightly below average team. I do know Houston is the better team. I know Houston is a good team. I worry about Houston blowing leads. And I also worry, as we've said 100 times in the past, about Houston's play calling. It's like they're in 3rd and long on every single drive. So that I don't like at all. So I wouldn't lay more than 3. I think 3 is a fair line. At 2.5, I am definitely on Houston. At 3, I'm picking Houston, but would not be surprised if I got a push or a backdoor push or a backdoor where the game is now tied and I need Houston to come pull something out. So I'm not on Miami at 2.5 for sure. At 3, I still lean Houston. We'll see where the lines come out contest-wise, but if you like this game, bet Miami now at 3 and bet Houston at 2.5. You can get the best of both numbers, and that's kind of where I lean.
Yeah, it looks like our difference here is how we view Houston. We 6 parts apart in the power rankings, and I think they could get there at 9th. Ultimately, like I said, I think they have a potential. Just we haven't seen it recently at all. Now, at the beginning of the season, is you highlighted that Buffalo game. Like they were great in that game, but we haven't of late. We just haven't seen.
They were also great in the first half of the Detroit game.
Yeah,
so they blew that game also.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's so tough to trust the team, and I completely agree about Mike McDaniel. I think he's been bizarre all year, not just this game. I don't know. I don't understand what he did when Tua was out. I think he got exposed pretty badly, and I lost a lot of respect.
And they're throwing bubble screens. Why couldn't Snoop Huntley come in and throw the same bubble screen?
Right.
There's nothing special about it. Sorry, Tua. There's nothing special. He averaged 2.1 seconds per throw in that game.
Yeah.
Get the ball, throw the ball. He literally threw the ball to Juwan Smith 3 times in overtime. That was their offense in overtime. Snap, bubble screen. Snap, bubble screen to the tight end.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that hard? If you're an NFL quarterback and you can't take a snap and immediately turn to your right and throw the ball, then you can't be in the league. And shame on McDaniel for not being able to do any of that. Because remember, they were scoring 6 points a game in some of those games. Yeah. They couldn't do anything.
Well, you had to get Alec Ingold involved.
My only explanation for that is McDaniels loves Tua so much. He wants to show how good he is that he sabotages the offense when Tua is not there.
I think that's really the only explanation, because I pointed this out many times, so forgive me if you guys heard this before. There were not just one, there were 2 games when Tua was out where Alec Ingold had as many touches as Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle combined. That should never happen once. It happened twice. So,
And explain to me the 4th downs. Last year, the year before, wasn't he always very aggressive? Even on his own 30-yard line, he was always such an aggressive-minded coach. It's 4th and 1. Go for it. And it's 4th and 4 to 6. Go for it. And it's
I couldn't believe
2 on the Jet side of the field, and he's punting with a deficit. It doesn't make sense.
I didn't get it. I was watching the game live. I'm like, okay, they're going to go for it. And it's no, kick field goal. Okay, it's weird. And then kick field goal again, and then punt. I'm like, what is happening? What are they doing?
I don't know.
The Jets were more aggressive. The Jets, they scored a touchdown on a drive where they converted I think it was a 4th and 4. And then the next play, they scored a touchdown. And then the Dolphins, on the next drive, they were facing a 4th and 4, and they either kicked the field goal or punted.
We're seeing it throughout the league, and we'll get to it with different teams. Like Dave Canales, Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
They had 2 touchdowns on 4th downs.
Yep.
That's winning football. You're not going to convert all of them, but if you consistently show, it's hard to play defense in this league. First of all, there's a lot of penalties, a lot of BS penalties, illegal contact, holding, whatever. Put the pressure on the defense and think about what the other team, coach, or fans or bettors want you to do. I want you to punt or kick field goals every time it's 4th down. If I'm betting on the other team, I want the ball back. Punt me the ball. Kick a field goal, take 3, because I know if you go for 4th and 2, and you're probably going to get a touchdown on this drive. But the lack of consistency, it's like he's high during the games. He's not. It doesn't make sense. There's really no explanation for it.
No, there's really not. I don't get it. But let's move on to the opponent from that team, for that game. Yes. The Jets at the Jaguars. So this line was Jets -3 to open, and I was excited. I'm like, okay, yeah, back on the Jets here. Then it went to 3.5, and I'm like, it's kind of sad that I missed out on the -3. I actually still like the Jets at -3.5, which kind of makes me sick inside. But given how bad they've been this year, but they actually finally showed some life last week. Now you can say maybe Miami just sucks, but I mean Jacksonville, we know they suck a lot more than Miami. the Jaguars are coming off a win, which like automatically says fade, because losing teams, like horrible teams like the Jaguars, coming off a loss, it's just automatic fade. I think just these bad teams have trouble sustaining success, and it's like anytime a horrible team wins like that, like it's almost like the Super Bowl. Like they're so shocked that they win, and they just can't bounce back. And I was like, Aaron Rodgers played his best game of the year. I don't know if that's going to stay. He is 41. There's bound to be regression at some point, but this is just such an easy matchup, not just for Rodgers, but for the running game as well. Jacksonville's run defense is horrible. And so I feel like the Jets should be able to run pretty well. And then you have Mac Jones against the Jets defense. And the Jets defense hasn't been good at all this year. They missed so many tackles. But the one thing they've done this year pretty well is rush the quarterback. Now, they don't have like a top at the pass rush, but it is like it pretty in the middle of the pack. And Mac Jones has such a huge dichotomy when he's under pressure. So listen to these numbers. Like when he's kept clean in the pocket, he completes 71% of his passes, 6.5 YPA, and a 7-5 touchdown interception ratio. When he's pressured, he completes 46% of his passes with a 5.1 YPA and a 3-7 touchdown interception ratio. It's like one of the largest dichotomies for pressure for quarterbacks. So the Jets can get any sort of pressure, and they do have the personnel to do that. Mac Jones could fall apart and just turn the ball over like crazy. And so I don't see the Jaguars scoring anything. And if Aaron Rodgers can play to 80% of what he did last week, then I think the Jets should cover easily. So who do you like this game?
I like the Jets.
Okay.
I don't think I'm betting the Jets, but I do like the Jets. We talked about their statistics, and of course they just continue to find ways to lose. With clock management, turnovers, lack of tackling. The one thing we could say about the Jets, and one of the reasons why I like the Jets last week, is because aside from the Arizona game, the Jets have come to play every week. It's not like they're getting killed in these games. They're playing hard and just finding ways to lose. Now, the Jags off the win, you mentioned. There's no run game for the Jaguars. Mac Jones is terrible. He threw 2 terrible picks. They should have lost that game. So I'm definitely not on the Jaguars side. I just don't want to lay more than 3 points with a Jet team that just is not deserving of being more than a 3-point favorite. I think the Jets win this game like a 23-16 type. Like I don't see Jacksonville putting up more than 2 touchdowns or 3 scores, 13, 16 points. And I do think the Jets could get into the high teens, low 20s. But I just don't trust them laying points. So I'm definitely not on Mac Jones. There's no way I want any part of Mac Jones, especially off of a win. But I just can't lay more than 3 points with the Jets. I think the line is fair, even though I do lean to the Jets. I made the line 3, and I'm picking the Jets to win by, say, a touchdown. But from a contest betting perspective, this is just not a game I have interest in.
Okay. I like it more than you do. I
certainly can't fault you for that.
Yeah.
But, if you take the Jets and they're up by 6, or if they're up by 3 late and kick a field goal and they're up by 6 or up by 10, remember, it was said last week, Jacksonville has covered a lot of games on the back door.
Yep.
Even Mac Jones. They covered the Green Bay game on the back door. They covered the Texans game on the back door. Now, they certainly looked lifeless last week, but they've been a backdoor covering machine, call it. Mm-hmm. That Eagles, I think they covered on the back door. Yep. So it certainly wouldn't surprise me if that were the case here. The Jets are just not a team that right now knows how to finish games. So I can't trust them laying points. I'm more confident they win the game, but not going to lay more than 3.
Yeah. I don't blame you for that. I want to see if this falls back down to 3. Hopefully it does. Like I said, I was like, I saw the 3 initially. I'm like, oh yeah, I like that. And then like instantly went to 3.5. So someone smart laid the 3. But yeah, it's tough to trust them. But yeah, I mean, motivation here for Chris asking what's the motivation for the Jets. I mean, I like contracts for the players. The players are going to play hard because they're playing for new contracts and stuff like that. Like this is their livelihood. They don't get to stay employed like normal people until they're 65 or 70. Like these guys are going to be out of the league within the next half dozen years, most of them. So like they are going to be playing for contracts. So like, teams can quit from time to time, like once in a while, but usually after they quit for one game, they bounce back because they realize like, crap, we have to play for new contracts here.
I want to point something out because somebody brought that up, and I was going to bring this up maybe with some other games, but people always say like, oh, well, Team X has nothing to play for. Mm-hmm. The Jets have nothing to play for, right? This one has nothing to play for. Oftentimes, those are the teams to bet on. Last week, you had the Giants, had nothing to play for. They fought back somehow, late in the game. Jacksonville had nothing to play for. I guess it's hard to say Carolina had nothing to play for because that's a young team that's trying to get better. But there's a lot of teams that quote unquote have nothing to play for. I think what's different about teams that are bad or have nothing to play for is maybe a lack of preparation throughout the week. But when the game starts, these teams are, for the most part, trying. So I don't see why the Jets wouldn't try in this game. Now, will they prepare properly? They might not put in some extra time. Neither would Jacksonville. But when the game begins, I think both teams are trying to win the game. I certainly think the players are trying to win the game. Maybe the coaching staff is not doing a very good job preparing them. But, and again, for me here, it's just about trusting a team to cover, whereas the other team has found ways to cover as dogs recently this year.
Yeah. And, I mean, the Jaguars are in the same boat, Chris. They were expected to make the playoffs by many people. They started great last year, and then they faltered down the stretch, but that was Trevor Lawrence getting hurt. So I think a lot of people expected them to bounce back and maybe make the playoffs. And now they also have a lame duck coach. Their quarterback's not there anymore. Why would they play hard for Mac Jones? So I think you can make that argument for Jacksonville as well. And the Jets played hard last week. So
you know what? This is a great game not to bet. You don't have to bet the game. I agree with you on the pick. I'm picking the Jets too, but I'm certainly not going to have money on the game because the Jets up by 10. I don't want to watch them blow. I don't want to watch how they're going to blow the clock, mismanage the clock, and all of a sudden Mac Jones is, throwing the ball downfield and making plays downfield on 3rd and 13, or there's a weird penalty, and or the Jacksonville's down by 14 or 17 points because they've been down big recently against multiple much better teams and have found ways to cover. Mm-hmm. So my money's not going on anybody, but if you're picking a game, I'm not picking Mac Jones.
Okay. All right. Let's get to the next one. We have another great quarterback here at home. We have Tennessee hosting the Bengals. Is this revenge for Brian Callahan and Chidobe Awuzie and the number of Tennessee players on the Bengals? We'll see. But this might be the game that we were expecting Monday night when I bet Dallas and Dallas blew the game, but they were either tied or leading for a chunk of the game. I think this could be something similar. Now, I kind of backed off that on Monday afternoon. I came into the week loving Dallas, and then as days went by, I kind of softened on that stance because just Joe Burrow coming off 2 losses in a row just felt like just a good spot for Burrow. You have these elite quarterbacks coming off losses, like Burrow coming off a loss in his career is 19-9 against the spread. You look at any great quarterback coming off a loss, they have a great track record. So I thought that Burrow would be playing at his best, and he had a great game. Jamar Chase was amazing. And so, even though it looked like Dallas deserved the cover, I'm not surprised that Cincinnati came back at the end and won by a touchdown. But I think this might be the one, like I said, this might be the one that we were expecting. Now we have Cincinnati coming off a win. They aren't a horrible team, but they are not a good team either. They are 22nd in that adjusted EPA. They have Joe Burrow, they have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Chase Brown, and then nothing else. The rest of the roster sucks. Trey Henderson's really good too, but the rest of the roster just sucks. Their defense is dead last in the NFL. They can't block. And so Orlando Brown's been injured. We'll see if he plays on a short week. It can't stop anything. And you have Tennessee, who has shown that Titans have shown that they can move the ball against bad defenses. Will Levis has completed some nice deep passes to Ridley and Nick Westbrook-Akine. And they have Tony Pollard, who can go the distance anytime he touches the ball. Rico Dowdle on Monday night rushed for 130 yards. Pollard is much better than Dowdle. So, or Doodle, as we call him here. Pollard should have a great game here. And so if you're worried about playing the Titans, and the record sucks, and you have Will Levis who could implode. But let me just try to allay your concerns. So they played 9 games since their bye. 6 of those teams have had an 8-5 record or better. 3 of those teams have had a 10-3 record or better. They played against some behemoths like the Lions and the Bills and Vikings, if you want to include them there. They battled the Chargers, a very underrated team. And so they played some really good teams. So if you take out the 3 games that they played against 10-3 teams, they've only lost by 4. They've only lost by more than 4 points just twice since their week 5 bye. So they could play close games. And given Cincinnati's horrible defense, like at the very least, there will be a backdoor cover opportunity here for Tennessee. Plus, you have Callahan, who is very familiar with the Bengals, having coached there recently. Plus, a Chidobe Awuzie, who came back last week. So now the Titans don't have Cluster Rangers at corner, which is key in this matchup, obviously. Like he's familiar with the receivers. So like a lot of familiarity here with Tennessee. And Cincinnati's coming up a short week off a win. So it feels like a good spot to fade him. I like Tennessee a lot here, +5. What do you think here?
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, it sounds like you're trying to convince me to take Tennessee. And this is the handicap I've had all year where I'm taking what I think is somewhat of a live dog, an underrated situation. And this is the game all year that we've lost. And that's why I like Cincinnati in the spot. Now, I don't like Cincinnati's defense, but their defense was actually not so bad last night. I mean, granted, their rush defense was poor, but in secondary, they weren't so bad. They did a very, very good job on CeeDee Lamb. Granted, Cooper Rush wasn't really throwing the ball on target much, but their defense was good. Trey Hendrickson has the most sacks in the league. I didn't realize that. I heard that last night on the broadcast. He leads the league in sacks. Their linebackers had a nice game. They got some pressure on Cooper Rush and forced him into mistakes. There was a couple of plays where they like tipped their hand on some blitzes, and then Cooper Rush went into like a hard count or an audible, and the blitz came anyway, and they still couldn't pick it up. It was kind of funny. But I just watched Levis throw to wide open guys in the end zone and completely missed them. And that was against the Jaguars' pathetic defense. So yeah, Cincinnati doesn't have a great defense either, but this is not a team that I want to be backing at this point. Tennessee ranks highly defensively. You mentioned some of the opponents. They were not good defensively against some of the better offenses. And now they're playing against one of the best offenses in football. So I don't expect that they're going to be able to slow down Cincinnati's offense here. Give me a number. I mean, is Cincinnati going to put up 16 points? No, I don't think so. I think Cincinnati is putting up mid-20s. I don't see any way they don't get to 23, 24, maybe 27 points. And I just don't see how Will Levis gets there. So I know it could be, and I said to you before we started recording, we were talking about last night, first quarter last night, I'm like, yeah, I'm on the wrong side. Like I have Cincinnati here, and this is a wrong play. I'm going to live bet Dallas +3.5. I'm going to live bet Dallas money line. I certainly think they're a live dog in the game. I had Dallas over 20.5 points I mentioned at halftime and lost all three. But and I'm not going to make that same mistake again. I don't think Tennessee's any good. They're 2-11 against the spread. This is not a team that has backdoor potential. At least Jacksonville has shown fight when they're behind. When Tennessee's behind, they get run out of the building. So, yes, Cincinnati didn't deserve to cover the game. But if you're backing Tennessee, like we've taken all year, these medium dogs, good luck. Something weird is going to happen. And I just don't think I don't think Tennessee's going to win the game. Cincinnati has 5 wins, right? Or what is it now? 5 wins, 6 wins?
5 and 8.
5 wins. All 5 wins have come by 7 or more points. They're not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs yet. They play Denver in 2 weeks. Denver could lose this week, right? Obviously, Denver and Indy are playing basically a game for the 7th seed. Denver could lose this week. Cincinnati plays them in 2 weeks. Cincinnati's not mathematically eliminated. Don't tell them that the season's over. You and I think the season's over, but the Bengals could win this game, and they're still theoretically alive. So I don't like the defense, but I love the offense, and I'm not betting on Will Levis. And I'm not banking on Will Levis for backdoors when they're 2-11 against the spread, and all 5 of Cincinnati's wins are by 7 or more points. So to me, it's Cincinnati or pass. No, this is not a contest pick. No, I'm not going to be crazy enough to lay the points with that defense. And I was originally, when I just made the lines, I actually made the line, I think 4.5, 4 or 4.5. And I immediately wrote down underdog. And then upon review, like, no, I kind of talked myself into, I don't want Levis in this game. So yeah. I'm certainly not advocating and trying to talk you out of the pick. It sounded like you were making a strong argument for Tennessee, but not for me. For me, it's 27-20 Cincinnati. And yeah, if they get in the back door, it's like Carolina. Cincinnati beat them 34-24. They won that game by 10. If that game happened now, obviously Carolina is much better now than they were, a month and a half ago. But that's the same type of win that I think Cincinnati would have. They'll put up their points. They'll get their points. They'll get their 27, 30 points. And their defense will give up 20-24. But I'm not excited about backing Will Levis. I know that this is the game last week, the week before that. Oh, yeah, Levis, dog, live dog, bad defense, great. Give me the points. And this is the one that's been losing. So this is the prototypical Joe Public is going to be on Cincinnati, and I want to be there right there with him.
Chris makes a good point here. Levis, he got banged up in the second quarter against Jacksonville, and then he did.
He gets banged up every game because he does reckless things. He dives with the ball. He hurts his shoulder. I mean, he's just a reckless quarterback.
Yeah, that's true.
But you know what you're getting going into the game. Yes, he's had a couple of really nice downfield passes, but I don't trust that defense. I think that defense is overrated. Against good teams, they've gotten gashed. I mean, Detroit, obviously a lot of special teams, put up 50. A lot of that was special teams, but a lot of it wasn't. Gibbs had a 70-yard run in that game. I don't see how they shut down Chase. Chase is unstoppable. Tell me Awuzie is back, but so what? Chase is better than him. Chase will get his. If they throw the ball at Chase 15 times, he's putting up 150 yards. So I don't see them stopping Burrow. Burrow, I was shocked, threw a pick. Guy never throws picks. He's having an MVP caliber season. Obviously, he's not the MVP, but he's playing great. They're going to get their yards. They're going to get their points. And I don't trust Tennessee to get theirs.
That's where we disagree. I have this game 31-28 Tennessee.
Tennessee winning. Okay.
Yeah, I do. I made this line Cincinnati -3, and I think with the familiarity with the coaching staff and the players on Tennessee. Not that that's an indication that they're going to cover. I mean, we've seen recently teams like the Chargers had familiarity with the Ravens, and it didn't matter. But I think historically, like it's more often than not, it does matter. So we'll see. I've just been anti-Cincinnati all year. I mean, you know this. Like I bash them every week just because like it feels like they're just 5 great players, and the 47 other players they have are just garbage. So especially their defense. The defense can't stop anything, and we'll see. We'll see if that impacts or that continues here against the Titans with Will Levis. But as Chris pointed out, Levis did get hurt, and Tennessee's offense did nothing in the second half after he got hurt. So we'll see the practice reports and stuff. So I may back off if he's like limited all week, and I just don't want to be on an injured quarterback. So that would definitely be a concern for me. I do think that that Pollard is going to have a massive game. I think Pollard could have like 150 plus rushing yards in this game. So he will definitely be someone I will be betting on player prop wise and laddering. For sure. I will be betting like 100 plus yards at like probably 2-1 and 125 plus yards at like plus 480 or something. Levis got hurt in the second half. So right in the first half. So I think that
look for what I did last night. I had a plus 550 on CeeDee Lamb and Chase, 200 yards combined, 2 touchdowns. Now I don't think you'll have to do the touchdown bet here, but you can look at same game parlays and talk about laddering. Chase is a monster.
Yep.
And he's just open every single play, and they target him 15 plus times. And if you believe that the game will be that high scoring, play to the situation of the game. Cincinnati might be behind. If that's the case, you have great opportunity to in-game Chase yards, catches, because he's getting a ton of usage. And if they're behind, they're throwing.
Yep. Yeah, you don't feel weird the Titans just giving up the game with their turnovers? Yeah, I mean, look, they had a pick 6 against Houston. They still won. Like they can beat Houston on the road. They can beat Cincy at home, I think, on a short rest. Cincinnati's 22nd in net adjusted EPA because the defense is so bad. You have the 22nd ranked team in the NFL being favored by 5 after a win on the road. Like, and the opposing coaching staff knows the roster pretty well. Like, it seems like, I don't know, it seems like so easy for Tennessee. And then you have Will Levis who just could sabotage it. So yeah, that is absolutely true. I definitely understand the concern there. But anyway, let's move on. We'll discuss this.
2-11 against the spread. Just remember it.
Yeah, but like now people know that they are horrible. Like, like early in the year they were what were their spreads? Like they were plus 3.5 against the Jets when people thought the Jets are good. They were favored by 1.5 against the Packers. Like, of course they didn't cover that spread.
They were a 2.5 point favorite against the Colts at home, lost. They were 10-point dog against Buffalo, lost. 13-point dog against Detroit, lost. They were favored against New England. They won but didn't cover. 8-point dog against the Chargers, lost. 6-point dog Minnesota, lost. Yes, they were 8-point dogs against Houston and won. Okay. 6-point dogs Washington, lost. I mean, they've been dogs by kind of medium numbers every week and just lose every week.
Some of these numbers haven't been like high enough. Like Washington was only minus 5.5 against Tennessee. That seems weird. Like Chargers are only -7. Like these numbers were so low. I don't know. I mean, +5 seems pretty high. I think against the Bengals team that's not good. And I think it's the case that where like a lot of people, the public, I mean, think that the Bengals are like despite 5-8 a good team because they have a great offense. And
let's see where this line goes because this line's been sitting at 5.
Yeah,
I'd be curious to see where this line closes, but either way, this is not a game I'm playing, regardless.
yeah. Bengals could be beating 5. Yeah, I mean they could have beaten the Ravens twice. That's absolutely true. All right, let's speaking of the Ravens, we have the Ravens at the Giants. The Ravens are favored by 15 points. So quite the number there. Despite the spread being so high, I actually like the Ravens. I think I don't see how the Giants compete here. Like they're an NFC team, which means they're not prepared for this Ravens team. They don't have to study Lamar Jackson at all. They play him once every 4 years. So like that's been a huge advantage for Lamar Jackson in the NFC. This is a Giants defense that has been gashed by injuries. Like they've lost so many defensive players to injuries in recent weeks. Like Dexter Lawrence just went down; he's out. I think they were missing like the top 3 defensive tackles last week, which is like one of the reasons why I like the Saints. And for some reason, the Saints didn't even try to run the ball in that game. I don't understand what they were doing. But the Giants, who are already bad against the run with Lawrence, like now they're going to have to try to stop Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, who again they're not familiar with. And so and you look at the Ravens' weakness, which I've harped on all year. Like the Ravens suck against the pass, but the Giants can't throw the ball, so the Giants can't take advantage of that one weakness. So the Ravens look great to me. Now I know a lot of points to lay on the road. Again, I'm going to allay your concerns here so dating back to 1989, which is as far as my database goes. I wanted to see how good these road favorites were as 14.5-point favorites or more. And I was surprised, like they're actually 13-8 against the spread. So there's really like, you can't be like, oh, like too many points on the road, like 14.5 or 15 road favorites, like way too much. It's actually covered at a decent rate. Now I know it's like 21 game sample size is not a lot, but it just shows you like you can win with these in the right spots. And I think this is the right spot. So I like the Ravens. Who do you like here?
You just said 21 game sample size. Would you like to pull up what Lamar Jackson's record is in his 21 or 22 game sample size against the NFC?
Are they like it's 20-2 or something?
It's like 21-1.
Yeah.
So small sample size, 21 games. That's not a small sample size. Lamar Jackson dominates the NFC. Okay. Yeah. I don't have much to add about this game. The matchup is an absolute nightmare. The one thing I was concerned about going in before I did some of my research on the game was, again, it's somewhat of a look-ahead spot. They play Pitt next. But they're coming off a bye and a loss. So we talk about teams coming off a bye and a win. This team's coming off a bye and a loss. And they didn't play well in that game. Tucker missed a bunch of kicks in that game, extra points, field goals. So maybe he remembers how to kick. Maybe something happened that changes his mindset, give him a couple of days off. But I look back and saw, all right, what was the other look-ahead spots this year? There was a Thursday night game against Cincinnati. We both went against Baltimore the week before. That was the game against Denver where they won 41-10. A week before they played Pitt earlier on. I mean, granted, it was Cincinnati, another divisional game, but they put up 35. So the one concern about Baltimore all year has been their secondary. But first of all, their secondary has been better. I mean, no question about it. They've certainly been better defensively. And the Giants don't have a passing game. So I don't see any way how the Giants compete. I'm confident Baltimore's putting up 30 plus. I made this game like 34-6. Maybe Baltimore takes guys out late in the game. Maybe Henry is not running the ball in the fourth quarter. So this is not the game where you want to maybe ladder some of those yards because there's certainly a possibility of guys sitting in the fourth quarter as they get ready for Pittsburgh. But maybe the Giants, like they did this week, put up a late touchdown. But this game is 34-6, 34-10. Something in that neighborhood. I'm not afraid to lay 15. I definitely don't like laying 15 from a contest perspective. We've been pretty good laying big favorites this year. Maybe not lately. Last week, obviously, Philly, and the week before, Detroit. But prior to that, favorites have been dominating these bigger lines. So I don't like laying 15, but I just don't see how the Giants score. I do not, Lou and Dre, you just pulled up, laying first quarter points because you don't know who's getting the ball first. And weird things can happen, a muffed punt, a penalty on a PI and a long PI. I don't know that I like laying those points early. I certainly could see why somebody would, maybe the half more so than the first quarter. But if you like those kinds of bets, maybe the bet is to take the team total over. So you don't have to worry about what the Giants do. Or on the flip side, the Giants team total under. So maybe there's better value there on the team total side. What is the over under in this game? I'm just curious. It's 43. Like this is the type of game where Baltimore can kind of get that by themselves. But I think this is a blowout. I don't want to spend too much time on it. There's no matchup. There's nothing in the matchup where the Giants should do anything on either side of the ball.
Yeah. I have it 45-10, so I do have the Ravens going over themselves. Does Deion block the Giants from drafting his son? I don't think so. It feels like the Browns. I can see it, but not the Giants. I don't see why he would do it. But as Charlie Campbell reported, our senior NFL draft analyst, he said that Deion will have a voice in where his son goes. So if it's Cleveland, I think they try to pull something there. But I think the Giants have been a good organization, minus these past several years. But like with Eli Manning, for example, like they won 2 Super Bowls. Like I imagine that Deion remembers that, and so plus he played against the Giants a lot in his career. All right, so we go to the next game, and is the Chiefs at the Browns. This line plummeted quite a bit. The advanced spread was 7 now, and then it came out at 6.5. It's dropped all the way to 4, which is it's quite the fall here for the Chiefs. And even though the line has dropped so much, I still would take the Browns. The Chiefs do the bare minimum to win. They just win by 1, 2, or 3 every single game. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. They just tend to squeak by. Their left tackle situation, I thought they might get some clarity with DJ Humphries last week, but then he got hurt and he didn't even play well. So much for that. So they can't block. And then the Browns get to the quarterback at the 3rd highest rate in the NFL. So that's going to be a concern here. So I don't think the Chiefs have much success in the red zone. They probably kick a bunch of field goals again. They probably score like 19 again, or maybe 22 if they're lucky. And we know the Browns can score. The Chiefs' pass defense is so bad. The Browns should be able to attack, especially with Njoku. The Chiefs' defense against tight ends is so bad. So I like the Browns to cover here. I don't think they'll win. Now, the one concern is, pretty well. It's like Jameis Winston, like down 3 with 2 minutes left. He throws a pick 6, and suddenly you're not covering. So that is the worry here.
Or down 9 at the goal line.
Right, exactly. So it's like, I think I'll be on the Browns. I might bet it, but at the same time, I don't know if I can go heavy here on Winston. So what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, you kind of have to be on the Browns. You just have to fade the Chiefs every single week. I mean, Cleveland's off the bad loss. Poor game, obviously. Their offense was dreadful. Jameis, another 2 picks. Kadarius Toney, he single-handedly cost them a chance to cover with the taunting penalty and then a muff punt. And I was actually thinking in my head, they should cut him. And then a couple hours later, he was cut. So Kadarius Toney was cut today. And that's good because, shows guys that, we're holding you accountable. And Kadarius Toney is playing himself out of the league with poor play and then, poor antics as well. Their defense was great. They held Pittsburgh to 4.3 yards per play. They only had 1 sack, but you mentioned their pressure rate. They actually pressured Russ 17 times. Kansas City, we've been saying this now for 2 months. They do the exact bare minimum to win the game. They're your 9 to 5 employee that clocks out at 5:01. I mean, they refuse to do anything. Chris Jones was asked after the game about playing these close games, and he jokingly said, "Listen, we're doing it for the ratings," and that's funny. But they're obviously not doing it on purpose, but they just know exactly what they need to do to win the game. Burrow last night threw a pass that Chase took to the end zone, and then the game's not over. There's no way that happens in Kansas City. Kansas City, Mahomes knows exactly what he needs. It's 3rd and 6. He gives you 7 yards. They get exactly where they need to get to make the kick. It doinks in. But they're not – while they know how to win games, and credit to them, the coaching staff and Mahomes for knowing how to win games, they're not nearly as good as they've been in the past. You mentioned DJ Humphries. Wanye Morris is a terrible left tackle. He had a lot of issues a couple of weeks ago. I think Mahomes benched him. Literally, Mahomes went to the coaching staff to get him out of the game. And they moved Joe Thuney from guard to tackle because they just couldn't take this Wanye Morris being in that spot. Mahomes they allowed as a team 18 pressures on 43 dropbacks. That's over 40%. Mahomes on those 18 pressures, he was 6 for 15, 80 yards, and took 3 sacks. That's a real problem. You know who lines up on the right side opposite the left tackle? His name is Myles Garrett. That's a real concern matchup-wise in this game. We talk about Giants-Ravens matchup. There is no edge. Here, there is a huge, colossal matchup edge towards the Cleveland defensive line on the right side against Kansas City's left side. And that's a big problem. So I don't see how Kansas City puts up 24-plus points. A, because they probably can't, unless they really, really had to. Mahomes has to make magic. But they don't need to. If they need to score 22 to win the game or 19 to win the game, they will. So unless you're getting the pick six or the pick in the end zone from Jameis, which is, of course, probably a better than 50-50 shot, you have to fade Kansas City. Kansas City now, I think it's 7 straight games where they failed to cover. Of course, they won 6 out of the 7 of those games. They have an NFL record 15 straight wins in one-score games. Cleveland on the other side, since beating Baltimore a couple of weeks ago, they've only covered 1 of the last 5 games, and they're 0-4 against the spread in all 4 losses. So they're not losing and covering. If they lose, they're also losing the spread. Kicking could also be an issue. Dustin Hopkins was really, really bad last week, had 2 short missed field goals. So that's certainly a problem when you're looking to cover big lines. The other thing to mention in this game, we saw Buffalo flat last week. Buffalo clinched division 2 weeks ago. Kansas City clinched the division last week. So there's possibility that, they clinch a division and there's somewhat of a flat spot ahead. So I just think, for me, it's Cleveland or pass. I'm definitely on the Browns. I don't care if they make this line 3.5. I mean, this line is coming down, down, down. I don't think they can make it that low. But if it gets to 3.5 even, I'm still on Cleveland. And it's partial matchup. It's partial Kansas City not having the motivation to cover. And just fade them every week. I mean, at this point, regular season, there's 4 games left. Is Kansas City going to cover more than 2 of those? I mean, if you had to bet right now every game, I would just fade Kansas City 4 times. You're likely covering 3 or 4 of those games. So why not? Until we get to the playoffs and the lines adjust, because even then they know how to win these one-score games. They don't need to win by margin. Kansas City should be favored by 3 in every game because they win by 3 every game or 2.
I was about to ask you if this line keeps falling. If it goes to 2.5, hypothetically, not that it will.
No, it won't go to 2.5. And at 2.5, you bet it the other way.
Yeah,
you know what?
I was going to ask
if
you.
You bet this game already at 5.5 or 4.5, then absolutely you're going to bet Kansas City minus 2.5. Now you have a nice fat middle around a key number. So someone said Bills weren't flat. McVay coached how he did. Bills were flat. Bills came out flat in that game. They woke up when they're down by 17 and fought back. But there's a little bit of, again, the Bills are awesome. I think the Bills might win the Super Bowl this year. Although they'll probably find a way to lose to Kansas City in the playoffs. But Kansas City clinched the division. They don't have to win by margin. You have to be fading Kansas City week in and week out. If you're going to take the good with the bad with Jameis, we know what it's going to be like. But you can't tell me that Kansas City is the right side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Great split saying Browns get up for these Super Bowl games at home. Yeah, they've been a giant slayer. They've taken down the Ravens and Steelers. Yep. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they won this game.
No,
I
sure.
think
Absolutely.
I think they'll find a way to lose, but the Browns came out on top. I wouldn't be shocked. All right, let's get to the last of the early games. Cowboys at Panthers. Lions Panthers minus 2.5. Feels like this is a very deflated situation for Dallas. Like they really thought they had a chance to make the playoffs. Like if you doubt that, like Jimmy Johnson said over and over again on Thanksgiving, like we win this game, then we get the Bengals, then we beat the Panthers. We're 7-7. That was like he said it 3 times. It's like parroting what he heard from Jerry Jones or someone in the higher ups in Dallas. And Dallas has been playing hard, and suddenly now they lost, and now they're 3 back of Washington. Yeah, they did play Washington again, but still, like you have to think that they're going to be kind of deflated here, especially off a short week. Whereas the Panthers have been playing so hard ever since Bryce Young re-entered the lineup. They beat the Saints, they beat the Giants. They almost took down the Chiefs. Then again, almost everyone did.
Everybody almost took down the Chiefs, yeah.
Right, exactly. They almost took down the Chiefs. They almost took down the Buccaneers. Really, they should have if Hubbard doesn't fumble. And then they played the Eagles closely last week. If Xavier Legette doesn't fumble or drop the pass at the goal line, they win the game in Philadelphia. So this team has been very impressive lately. Their defense has gotten a lot better. Josie Jewell's return has helped. DJ Wanham's return has helped the pass rush. Bryce Young has been playing at a higher level. Like he still makes some mistakes, but his anticipation, I think, just like he just like mentally, I think he's there. I just think that like physically, I don't know if he'll ever be there. But I do think that he could be an average starting quarterback. If you look at the EPA numbers, ever since he returned, he is currently 20th in quarterback EPA. He's like just above Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield ever since he returned. So he's been okay. And then Dallas just lost Dallas lost two key players last night. They lost Cooper Beebe, their center, which is a big deal because they're already missing Zach Martin. So they have cluster injuries on the interior offensive line. They lost the Marvian Overshone, who's been playing really well in the front seven. So Carolina looks better right now. I don't really trust them to cover as a 2-point favorite. Like I like them in the role as an underdog to, maybe either win or keep it close. But here they have to win by a field goal or more, but I do think they will. So I like Carolina. I don't know if I'm going to bet this game, but I am siding with them. So who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I'm siding with them, and I can tell you there's zero chance I'm putting money on this game or picking a side. No way. I agree Carolina's been playing better, but now you're asking them to win a game.
Right?
They've absolutely played better than Dallas lately. I don't know who actually thought Dallas had a chance to make the playoffs. I mean, that's just comedy. Did Dallas players think they had a chance? The coaching staff, Jerry Jones. I mean, who thought Dallas was live for the playoffs? I mean,
someone did because they kept telling Jimmy Johnson to say those things. So
I mean, okay, Dallas is dead man walking. Now they've played better the last 2 weeks and they've ran the ball better. I think both of these teams want to run the ball, and that's where you may see some success on both sides because both of these defenses are absolute trash. Carolina just continues to play very well and get close. But aside from Thielen, these guys can't catch. Leggett can't catch. He had that game in his hands and he literally dropped the game away. Bryce Young, I'm willing to tell you now that he's in that 21 to 25 bucket. I told you last week that I want to see him play against the Eagles. He was good. He really was good. Got to be fair. He was good in that game. You know who else was really good in that game? Dave Canales, who's putting Bryce Young in position to be good and doing the things that winning teams need to do. 2 of their touchdowns against a better team as dogs, 2 of those 2 touchdowns were on 4th down. One on the goal line and one they had a 4th down conversion that led to a touchdown. So this is where Carolina is definitely the superior coach team. Mike McCarthy, we said before, his team, his players didn't know that after a ball is tipped or blocked at the line of scrimmage, it's not a loose ball. Get away from the ball. His players are not aware of that. They're all running for the ball. Guy touches the ball, and then Cincinnati recovers basically a fumbled kick, like an onside kick. Just get away from the ball. So McCarthy and Troy Aikman is lobbying for him to get an extension now. I mean, this guy can't coach. Cooper Rush is missing guys right and left. I do expect both teams to be able to run the ball, which is weird to say because Dallas hadn't had a running game before 2 weeks ago. Now they do. I just don't want to pick Carolina, who's been a really good covering team. I don't want to pick Carolina to now where they have to win the game. And Parsons is still the best player on the field, and he could be a difference maker. He could get to Bryce Young. Bryce Young escaped a lot of pressure last week. He was really good against pressure. I thought in the last drive when they're on the 2-yard line, I thought he was going to take a sack in the end zone or at least maybe throw a pick, something, but he made plays. He led a drive, and he should have thrown a game-winning touchdown pass. Credit to him and credit to the coach. No credit to the offensive receivers who outside of Thielen can't catch. But I'm not betting this game. I'm not teasing this game. I'm not betting this game. I'm not picking this game from a contest perspective. I think this line is actually moving a little bit too far right now. Like I made the line originally pick them, and then I'm like, nah, you know what? Let me give Carolina the advantage, make them Carolina -1. The look ahead was Dallas -1, and Panthers have looked so good. Now this line is 2.5. I mean, if this line gets to 3, I mean, I don't know how you can lay 3 with Carolina. But anything under a field goal, I'll pick them. Just walk away. I mean, again, so many games. This is just definitely not a game. I don't want to be on these awful games, these bottom of the league teams. And from a contest perspective, I also don't necessarily want to be on teams, which we'll get to, like Buffalo, Detroit. Games that could be really, really good games. To me, are just fun to sit back and watch. I don't think there's a real betting angle when a line is essentially around pick 'em for the top games, top teams, or the bottom teams. So for me, it's an easy pass.
Let me ask you this question because I'm kind of curious myself. Like, what would the spread be if Chuba Hubbard doesn't fumble against Tampa and they win that game, and then Leggett catches the ball and they win that game against the Eagles? And the Panthers are 5-8 against Dallas 5-8. having beaten the Eagles? Like,
I have the Cowboys right now, 26th in the league. I have them minus 4.5 points from an average team.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have I've been bumping up Carolina. Remember, 4 weeks ago, I had them minus 10.
Yeah.
Then they had a bye. Then they almost won. I bumped them to minus 8. They almost won again. I bumped them another point, 7, 6, and now 5.5. Now, the truth is, they did drop those balls, right? They dropped the pass. They did fumble. Those things did happen. You can't discount the fact that they didn't happen. I get it if they didn't happen, if Liget could catch, if Chuba doesn't fumble. But remember, in the game where there's a fumble, they also missed a bunch of short field goals. They also didn't close the game out as far as defending Baker, and Baker wasn't good in that game. He threw the ball away a few times, and nevertheless, I still bumped them 0.5 point. So had they caught the ball, and maybe they're not minus 5.5, maybe they're minus 4.5 or minus 4, in which case they're quote unquote the better of the two teams in my ratings, and then they get maybe a 1 point or 1.5 point home field edge. Maybe then the line, I think, could creep towards 3. See, I don't have this line at 2.5 even. I still think this line is more like a minus 1. And I think the money has come on Carolina, and maybe rightfully so, and the line has moved. I definitely don't think this line is more than 3. So whether they won those games or not, they're certainly not, a head and shoulders team that's, clearly the better of the two teams. For them to be minus 3.5, they'd have to be at least 2.5 to 3 points better on a neutral field. Because I don't really think they have much of a home field edge. Home field to me is like 1.5 points. Mm-hmm. And then my algorithm automatically, anytime it's between 3.5 and 7.5, the line automatically to me drops by 0.5 point. Maybe it shouldn't because favorites have been so good this year, but that's just the way my math works. They would have really had to be the much better team to be favored by more than a field goal. So we're getting up into that ballpark now where I think there's value on Dallas at 3, not at
2.5. Some people in the chat are thinking about Panthers at 500 to 1 to win the Super Bowl next year, which I like. What'd you say?
Good luck.
Well, here's the thing, right? Like, yeah, they're not going to the Super Bowl, but the division is so bad that they probably they could win the division. And if you have a 500 to 1 in the playoffs, that's a super easy way to hedge. And just
first of all, it's not going to be 500 to 1.
Well, someone was saying it was 500 to 1. I think Ron was saying. I don't know if Ron, you tell us which sportsbook you saw that it was 500 to 1.
Because usually the worst teams are like 150 to 1.
Yeah, that's why I thought. So I don't know.
I don't think you're getting 500 to 1. I, as a fake Vegas fan, right, somebody who I'm in Vegas all the time. I kind of joke around that it's my hometown. When the Vegas Golden Knights opened, I thought about taking a bet on the Vegas Golden Knights at 500 to 1, and then I don't know anything about hockey. And then I said, why would I bet this and put on away money? And of course, 500 to 1, they made Stanley Cup. So nice. I don't think any NFL team is going to be 500 to 1. I do agree that there's a lot of value on the division. You might get a nice 10 to 1 on the division, 12 to 1 somewhere in that ballpark. That's not bad. The division stinks. It's probably not going to be very good next year either. But they're not winning the Super Bowl. And they're not making the Super Bowl. They're not nearly one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the NFC that are going to make a run. No. Yeah. But if you're getting 500 to 1 somewhere, okay, God bless. But
apparently it's 150 to 1, not 500 to 1.
Yeah, 150 makes more sense because that's one of the worst teams. Usually 150.
Yeah, I think the sportsbooks got burned in '99 with the Rams. I forget what they made the line, but it was astronomical, and they lost a lot of money. And ever since then, they haven't made them super high. So you haven't gotten the same sort of like crazy edges that you had with some of those worst teams. I actually had the Panthers to win the division at 12 to 1 at the beginning of this year. And I like this is the team I expected to see at the beginning of the year. Like when I bet the Panthers against the Saints in week 1, and I bet the Panthers against the Chargers in week 2, and I got embarrassed in both games because they got demolished. And I was like, man, I really was wrong on this team. I thought they'd be a lot better, and like now they're playing that way. I guess I should have assumed it might take them a little bit with the new coaching staff. But no, they've certainly improved a lot. So. I don't know. Maybe I'll bet on them a little bit here just because.
Well, if you're betting on them, make sure you're betting it on less than -3.
Agreed. All right. So the team the Panthers almost beat Steelers at the Eagles. So this line is Eagles -5 here. There's some 4.5s out there. I like the Eagles here. Now it's tough to go against Mike Tomlin as an underdog. Mike Tomlin his record as an underdog is 63-34 against the spread as an underdog. So I think you need a good reason to fade Tomlin when he's an underdog. And it feels like the games when he's a dog in which he's lost is like these sort of games where he's playing against an elite competition. Remember he played against the Chiefs twice in a span of like 3 or 4 games. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. And then last year against the Bills in the playoffs, like he didn't cover those games because he was just completely outmatched. And I think that's the case here. The Eagles are number 1 in all rankings, especially in defense, the run defense, which is key here, because the Steelers may not have George Pickens. And so you have Russell Wilson, who looked pretty bad last week when he had been playing well, but he took a step backward last week. And you could say, okay, it's the Browns defense, but he also didn't have Pickens on those deep shots. And it sounds like Pickens is a long shot to play in this game. So without Pickens, like his number 1 receiver is who, like Van Jefferson or Calvin Austin. That's not going to fly against this defense, the secondary that's been so good this year. Now there's some locker room situation here with the Eagles where AJ Brown, he went to local radio and is complaining about his targets. Now I've seen this so many times where the media makes that out to be this big deal, and it's really not. Hurts and AJ Brown have probably kissed and made up already, so I don't think it's a big deal. So I like the Eagles here. I don't know if I'm going to bet this one, but it feels like they should be able to cover the spread. So what do you think about this game?
Yeah, I'm on the Eagles too, but I'm not betting this game.
Okay.
Pitt obviously off the first of all, there's good continuity to this card. We had Miami played the Jets last week, and then we talked about Miami, and then the Jets were the next game, and then the Jets played the Jaguars. The next game after that is Tennessee, and we had talked about the Jaguars, Tennessee. Now we get Pitt, Eagles, and the Eagles we just talked about with Carolina. It's like a weird consistency, weird flow to the card. I don't know. And the NFL just works like that. But anyway, Pitt being off the easy win, they didn't play well in that game. 4.3 yards per play, not impressive. The defense was solid, but I think really it was more Cleveland kind of shooting themselves in the foot multiple times. Where that game kind of got away from them. Philly, obviously, terrible, terrible game plan. There were so many times as I'm watching that game thinking, why are they not just giving Saquon the ball? And then they give Saquon the ball and he rushes 15 yards or 12 yards. And then instead of giving him the ball again, let's Hurts back to pass. And Hurts was awful throwing the ball, just really, really poor. They had 6.1 yards per carry, 207 yards. But their overall yards per play was 5.2. That's really bad. Usually your throwing should be more yards per play, at least, than rushing. So their game plan was kind of backwards. Obviously, we talked about the Carolina drops in that game. I think sometimes when you have a really poor game, even if it's off of a win, it kind of gives you a little bit of a wake-up call. We lost the game. We got to do better. But they were so bad. There's so much contention in the media. I worry, though, that this week they kind of make an extended effort to get A.J. Brown the ball. And that's really not the right game plan. The right game plan is running the football as much as possible, utilizing Saquon, utilizing Hurts' legs instead of Hurts' arm. And I worry that if they get away from that too much, like they kind of did last week, that's not the game plan to play into. We talked about Pitt coming off an easy divisional win, multiple divisional games. Baltimore's next, not the spot that I want to be on. I understand Tomlin as a dog, but I really don't want to be on Tomlin, even as a dog, when they're playing Baltimore next week. And by the way, the look-ahead line in that game is more than a field goal. We all know what we're going to be on next week. I don't care where that game is. I don't care who plays in the game. Game's a field goal game, and shame on Vegas for making that line higher right now, but we'll talk about that next time. One thing I do look at in this game is, Philly pressured Bryce Young all day. They were really, really good getting to him, and credit to Bryce Young, he was mobile in the pocket. He was able to make plays with his legs. Russell Wilson's not mobile, and he's not mobile in the pocket for sure. And if they can get to him, I don't see how he escapes. Pickens not being there or not being available is probably a big problem. And like I said, Pittsburgh's off 4 straight divisional games, and the divisional game coming up next. So maybe there's somewhat of a letdown spot for them. I get this line. Philly played really well against Baltimore, beat them by margin. They beat Cincinnati by margin. Maybe Cincinnati's not as good, but they've beaten up on some of the good teams. And I think this is another one that could be in that ballpark. The pressure could lead to mistakes. So even though Pittsburgh is great not turning the ball over, I think the pressure on Russell Wilson this week could lead to some mistakes. If they follow the right game plan, and Sirianni's been very, very weird with his game plans, and I don't like Sirianni as a coach, I've said this a number of times that I don't trust Sirianni, but he is aggressive. If they run the ball, I think they have a matchup edge there, and I like Philly to win. So not going to bet it. I think it's too many points for me to lay on a contest pick. I am leaning towards the Eagles. I'm picking the Eagles in pool play, but I don't think this is a contest pick for me.
Yeah, this is Kim Eagle pointing out Steelers' schedule. If 6 days later they're the Ravens, and then 4 days later they're the Chiefs. It's a weird round robin sort of deal. With they play before Christmas games. Teams they play on Saturday, then they play on Wednesday, which I can't get behind Wednesday games, even though they moved the prior games back one day. It feels like we already have like too many Thursday games where we have bad play.
Yeah, mentally, it's even though you have that extra day, like you said, Saturday, there's still a mental aspect. Those games are going to be really poor games.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
I worry about those. I mean, injury possibilities. That's a really, really tough. From a mental perspective, these guys are all about routine, right? Mm-hmm. Throughout the week, even if you have that extra day in there, the routine is you're resting on Monday. Your game plan is starting on Tuesday, right? Now your game plan's got to be put in on like Sunday, which is weird. And then you're practicing, you're doing your walkthrough and whatnot on Monday, and you're traveling on Tuesday if you're the road team. So it's like everything is just so off. There's no recovery time. There's no prep time. But Kansas City will find a way to win by one. I actually think Pittsburgh's going to win that game. Okay. And I was thinking about it because I say this every freaking week. All my Survivor picks are kind of in, and I lost in week 3 when I foolishly changed from Jets to Raiders. I would still be alive and one of like 50 people left with Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Kansas City for the Christmas Day Survivor. And I keep asking myself, like, I wonder what I would have done on that Christmas slate for Survivor. And I don't know where I would go. But a lot of people, whoever's left, most of them are getting knocked out on Christmas Day.
Yeah, we know that.
I actually looked at that website before. Somebody is asking for like $100 and something thousand if you scroll down.
I see 11,000. Maybe it's a different page. Let's see.
If you filter by Survivor only, Circa Survivor only.
Okay. Let's see. I see 10,000.
Someone was offering a very large percentage of the overall pot left. Maybe it's not there anymore. I can't imagine it was sold.
It's a 40,000.
No, it was over $100,000.
Okay, let's.
It was like 130 something thousand for like 90%.
Yeah, it's not here anymore. So
okay, and gave you pick options, and I checked who they had available, and there aren't anybody available. Like they're like boxed out on Christmas.
Oh, really? They're going to automatically lose on Christmas?
No, they're not automatically because you could take Chicago or Seattle on Thursday night also.
Okay.
I didn't check if they had either one of those teams available. But yeah, it's I do like Pittsburgh in that Kansas City game in a couple of weeks. But we're not there yet.
Yeah, I think I might be there too. We'll see. I mean, we still have a couple games to go. But yeah, let's move on to the big game of the week. Bills at the Lions. What'd you say? Sorry. Oh, okay. All right, Bills at the Lions. It's hard to believe that like you have Eagles and Steelers. It's not the best game of the week. It's Bills and Lions here at 10-3 versus 12-1. I actually like the Bills here to bounce back. They had a flat spot or a bad coaching spot, whatever you want to call it. They're coming off a loss, and I said this before. When you have a great quarterback coming off a loss, they tend to cover the spread. As I said before, Joe Burrow is 19-9 against the spread off a loss. Josh Allen's record is not as great. It's 12-8 against the spread off a loss, but still it's pretty good. This is the same sort of phenomenon that you have with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, you brought up his record against the NFC. Josh Allen's record against the NFC isn't as good, but it's still pretty good. He's 16-10 against the NFC, and it really just makes a lot of sense because these teams, they're not prepared to play against this like freak of nature and Josh Allen. Like the AFC teams are game planning for it because they have to go against him once every year, maybe once every 2 years. So they know to draft to stop him, and they know how to game plan against him. Whereas like the Lions, they never see Josh Allen. So I think this is going to be a tough spot for them. I just like Buffalo coming off this. Coming off the loss, plus the Lions, like they've survived these past couple of games. Like they easily could have lost to the Bears. Now I know there was a comeback, so they could have lost to the Packers as well. Feels like they haven't played their best the past couple of weeks, and I think they could get they could suffer a loss here against Buffalo. So what do you think about this game?
Yeah, I lean to Buffalo in this game. I'm definitely not going to pick this. I mean, I said before, when there's two really bad teams or two really good teams, I think this is really very much a toss-up game. I don't disagree with Detroit being a slight favorite, but I do agree with what you said. I mean, Detroit obviously off the solid win, extra rest. They've been very aggressive on the fourth downs. They were 4 for 5, including the three times on the goal line. Those late, like these games are going to be decided by the decisions to go for those fourth downs and, of course, the execution. Now, Buffalo last week was awful on third down. I mentioned the Rams 11 for 12 on third down at one point, finishing 11 for 15 on the third down. That's a really big problem. So that's not something that I'd be excited about from either perspective. And Detroit was pretty good against Jordan Love. They got some good pressure on him. They held Green Bay to 1 for 5 on third down. But the defensive injuries are piling up, especially the injuries along the line. They're getting guys back in the secondary, but the D-line is like they're playing like almost an entire roster of new players from what they started with. And that's a really big problem against Josh Allen. Now, I did look back, I always say Allen off a loss. I also don't want to go against Josh Allen off a loss. They did lose back-to-back games earlier this season. So his first loss of the season actually was a back-to-back loss. But the Bills now have 7 straight games of 30-plus points. So the one thing I'm most confident in this game, given Detroit's injuries on the defensive side and Buffalo just being an absolute buzzsaw machine right now, I know Buffalo is getting 30-plus, right? I'm confident that Detroit can get at or close to it. I actually have this game 34-31, somewhere in that ballpark. I think it's an absolute shootout. The over-under, I think, is at 55, the highest of the year. Usually professional bettors see anything over 52, 53, and they hammer the under. And this line opened, I believe, at 53.5 and is now 55. So that kind of tells you what you need to know about these defenses or about the offenses, really. So I'm very confident in both teams scoring points. I'm more confident in Buffalo putting up 30-plus. I think that's probably the better angle from a betting perspective is betting the over. I know that's kind of like, oh, Joe Public, squarish, whatever. I don't care. I think both of these teams can't stop the other. Both of these teams are going to be aggressive. The only way this game goes under is if you end up with a lot of those fourth and goal type of situations and a lot of failures inside the red zone. Because I don't think these teams are kicking inside the red zone. So if it's fourth and goal from the 2 or fourth and 1 from like the 12 and they're getting stops, great. But I don't think you're stopping Josh Allen on fourth and 1, and I don't think you're stopping the Lions offense either on fourth and 1 or fourth and short. So I like both teams to put up points. I like downfield passing. I like big playability here. I do think it's relatively a toss-up game, so I don't want to pick it. I lean to Buffalo. Love the over.
Okay, yeah, we're in agreement there. Normally I wouldn't take the Bills. So Detroit's defensive injuries have me concerned. Yeah, they have a ton of injuries, as Evan pointed out. So all right, let's go to the next game. And we had a question about this one in the opener from Ron. Colts at the Broncos. Actually, you could have handicapped this one last week because both these teams are coming up buys. Now, I'm not a fan of the Broncos. I've been talking them down most of the year. I know you have been too. It feels like a lot of their wins have been, either fluky or circumstantial. Like their first win, which was a blowout win over Tampa. Like Tampa was coming off that revenge game against the Buccaneers, and so they were flat. The next week they beat the Jets, where the Jets had to fly out to London the next week. They've suffered some blowouts. Like they got blown out by the Chargers. I know it's 23-16, but it was 23-0 in the fourth quarter, and they just got some late touchdowns there against the Ravens. They were blown out, obviously. Now the Colts aren't as good. Those two teams, obviously, but I think they match up well against the Broncos because what the Broncos what the Colts do like defensively. It feels like they can, where the Colts are weak defensively, I should say. It's like feels like the Broncos don't attack. Like the Colts are weak against the run, whereas like the Broncos can't figure out which running back they want to use, and like all three running backs are pretty mediocre. And the Colts are weak against tight ends, and the Broncos don't use their tight ends. So I feel like the Broncos won't score as many points as usual as we've seen recently in this game. And I think the Colts should be able to move the ball a little bit with Richardson. I'm worried about his interceptions and stuff. But he can at least run the ball. I think Jonathan Taylor can have some success running the ball here. We saw Jerome Ford have some success on the ground in the game before the bye. So And plus, Jameis Winston just threw all over the secondary. Now, I don't trust Richardson to do that, but if Josh Downs is back, that should help him a little bit. So I like the Colts at +4. I don't know if I'm going to bet this one. Probably not. But I don't know. What do you think about this one?
So this line opened what, 4? I think the line was 4.5.
Yeah, down to 4.
It's down to 4 now. I thought I saw 3.5 at one point. Maybe it's back to 4. Both teams are off a buy and a win. So again, situation. I don't like that buy and a win situation. This is basically a playoff game for the 7th seed. And unless you buy the Bengals, which I actually do, to run the table and make it interesting, I do think that this is potentially the playoff game. Both of these teams are excellent against the spread. Denver obviously should have beaten Kansas City, but everybody should have beaten Kansas City, or at least close to. But otherwise, show me their signature win. I mean, we talk about being impressed with the resume. I don't think Denver really has any signature wins on their card. Being the Atlanta game, they killed Atlanta. I don't look at that as a signature win. Earlier in the season is kind of too far away. They did beat Tampa. They beat the Jets. I mean, great. They beat the Jets 10-9. I mean, this is not really the resume of a great team. And the Colts also don't really have any impressive wins on the schedule. I think whoever wins this game probably gets the 7th seed and probably gets blown out by Buffalo in the first round of the playoffs. That's probably the way I'm going to lean at this point, and that's going to be a massacre game. In some capacity, I like having a 7th seed, more football, more entertaining, but I haven't really seen many. Although last year Green Bay did beat Dallas, but that's because Dallas in the playoffs is high comedy. But outside of that, the 7th seed is usually not a competitive game. So I think this game is very actually similar to the Denver-Cleveland game. I know you said you don't trust Richardson. Richardson's going to go 12 for 25 in the game. He'll be slightly below 50%, but he's going to throw for 300 yards because he's going to hit a couple of big downfield plays. He's also going to throw his picks. So I think this has a lot of potential to be that backdoor cover. I actually think the Colts are a live dog, and I actually have the Colts winning this game outright. I do think the Colts are slightly the better team. Maybe it's hard to prove that right now. Denver has been playing better. But again, I'm not impressed with their wins. I mean, Indy, again, it's a while ago, but they beat Pittsburgh, not handedly, but they beat Pittsburgh 27-24. That's probably their signature win of the season. I think this line should be 3.5. And even if it is 3.5, it's definitely on my contest card. And barring injury or something that I see that changes my mind, this is probably one of my top picks of the week.
Okay, nice. We're both on the same side, but you like this one a lot more than I do.
I like Indy to win. I wouldn't be surprised if Indy won the game. And if I'm looking at teasers or money line parlays and whatnot, Denver's not on that ticket.
So you don't like Denver +9? I don't.
I like everybody 13-point teaser. But the look ahead 4.5. I actually made the line 3. My power rating makes the line 3. I made the line 3. I thought 3 was the right number. Anything over 3, I like India. I like India a lot.
Okay, nice. I'm alive to the Rams +9 and Bills +9 and teasers from last week. Any hedge suggestions?
You're alive, meaning that closes those individually close a bet.
He probably teased those with other games from last week. So
okay, well, you have free equity. I mean, if you like the Rams, then you leave it alone. You don't have to hedge. You have a good number, you leave it alone. If you don't, if you like the Niners, you have a great bet to either play all or half of your bet on the Niners at -2.5. Same thing for Detroit. I mean, if you like your game, if you like the game, you now have a free bet. You don't have to lay it at the current price, at the straight bet. You just let it ride. Mm-hmm. If you don't like your bet anymore, then bet the other side. If you don't like the other side, then don't throw away money. One bet should have nothing to do with the other. If you want to guarantee yourself profit, okay, depends on how much money you're betting. I mean, if that's your standard number, then just let it go. If indeed you do like the Rams, sounds like you liked the Rams last week, so then let it play out at +9. That's fine. Yeah. And Bills +9, both of those are obviously great numbers. I would just leave. I don't let it ride.
Yeah, it's not even hedges. You can middle it, so win both.
Well, you could middle it, but I'm saying you don't have to bet the other side just to quote unquote middle it, right?
Right.
Try to win both. If you like the Rams, then don't bet the Niners at all. If you like the Niners, then bet the Niners, and now you have kind of a free equity position to cover your bet. But those are great numbers. I would just let it go.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's get to Buccaneers at Chargers. This line is Chargers -3. Um, so it's funny. The Buccaneers are first place here with 3 straight wins after they got Mike Evans back, and I feel like the public is pretty impressed with them. The public is betting Tampa right now. But if you look at their 3 wins, it's been against the Giants, Panthers, and Raiders. I know you can only play, what's on your schedule, but the combined records of those teams are 7-32, and it's not like they've blown out all 3 teams. No, they did blow out the Giants. The other 2 teams, like they barely scraped by the Panthers, and then with the Raiders is 14-13 for most of the afternoon. So they could have lost those 2 games. So I can't say I'm very impressed with the Buccaneers, despite them being in first place again. And then you had the Chargers, who are coming off a loss, which I like. Now, the only concern here, and this is another worry that I forgot to mention this in the previous game. Denver has the Chargers coming up on a Thursday night, so there could be a look ahead. Same thing with the Chargers here; they could be looking ahead to Denver. However, unlike Denver, which is coming off a win plus bye, you have the Chargers coming off a loss. So I think they are less likely to look ahead than Denver. But that is my only concern here. So this is not going to be a big bet for me or anything. But I think the Chargers are definitely the better team here. And at -3, it's a pretty manageable spread. So I like the Chargers here. I might bet them. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but I will be on them. So who do you like in this game?
Well, I think the line is right if McConkey and Dobbins plays. Now, if McConkey and Dobbins don't play, I wouldn't make this line 3. And if you gave me 3, I'd probably tell you, well, I kind of like Tampa Bay. If those guys do play, then I like the Chargers. This is one of those games where if you gave me 3.5, I'm on Tampa. If you gave me 2.5, I'm on the Chargers. I don't see a real angle here. Tampa obviously off the easy win. They kind of let the Raiders hang around for a little while. Baker has not been sharp. He was bad last week. He was bad the week before. They did rush last week for almost 6 yards per carry. I know the Chargers are a significantly better run defense. The Chargers played well. I mean, I got to say I was impressed again with the Chargers. They've been playing better teams. I find myself more impressed with them. They're down by 13. And there's not a lot of players on that team, and they fought back and had a very good chance to win the game at the end of the game. So that was an impressive showing in loss. Again, resume, Tampa Bay, who have you beaten? I don't trust the Bucs when they're playing good teams. Like they forced overtime with Kansas City, but who hasn't? Right? Who hasn't tied Kansas City or almost beaten Kansas City? We've said that a number of times already. They lost twice to Atlanta. They lost to the Niners. They lost to Baltimore. So when they're playing better teams, they're generally losing. You mentioned the 3 teams they've beaten recently, and obviously we're not impressed by that. So, but again, if these guys are hurt, if McConkey is not healthy, if Dobbins is not healthy, I don't necessarily want to lay -3. I like the Chargers to win the game. I trust that the Chargers are the better team, but I can't lay more than 3 points. And I don't have much interest in taking Tampa, especially if the line is under 3. So for me, this is another easy pass.
Okay. I think you meant Perriman, not I think Dobbins is an IR. So Perriman's been the one who's been out with the run defense.
Well, I just meant in general, without a healthy Dobbins.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay. Right, yeah. McConkey's big there. Although Herbert in the second half of that Chiefs game was unstoppable. I think he
was awesome, but guys can't catch.
I think he misfired. His first incompletion was with in the second half was with 5 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. It was just unreal how great he was in that game.
Who was his top receiver in the game?
Yeah. Despite not having
Will Dissly.
No, Dissly got hurt, which I know because we had him in the same parlay. Of course, he got hurt. It was Joshua Palmer who was the
Josh Palmer, right? Okay.
Yeah, and I saw someone laddered Palmer, and I was like, oh man, why didn't I think of that? Someone laddered him up to like 100.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking. Stone Smart had a couple of big catches in the game.
Yeah, Smart's not even spelled right, but he can catch balls pretty well. So, all right, let's get to the next one. Patriots at Cardinals. The line movement on this game has been something else. Like the advanced spread in this game was set Arizona -7. Then it opened. I think it opened 6.5. Then it fell to 4. Then it fell to 4.5. And then it popped back up to 5.5. So there's been a lot of betting here back and forth on these 2 teams. I like Arizona quite a bit. So like
it's actually back to 6 at circle.
It's back to 6. Okay, yeah. So I like Arizona quite a bit here. So they may look unappealing based on their past 3 games, but you got to look at their opponents. They played Seattle twice and Minnesota. Both teams are in the top 7 of EPA. And they were up 19-6 in Minnesota before blowing that lead. So like they could have beaten Minnesota, and yeah, they were definitely losing to Seattle twice. But Seattle's had their number over the past 3 or 4 years, and Seattle's been a dominant team. Like in the second half of the season, their defense has been unreal ever since Leonard Williams has gotten healthy. So I don't think there's any shame in losing to Seattle, and I just think Arizona now playing against an inferior team, I think is going to give them a good advantage here. And like a couple weeks ago before the bye, New England went into Miami and they just got demolished. Like it wasn't even close. And we know Miami and Arizona are pretty similar because they played a game that went down to the wire in Miami. Like not too recently, it was a Tua Tagovailoa came back. So I think that Arizona coming off 3 losses in a row against this Patriots team that like, I don't think the bye is going to help them that much because they have a rookie coach, a rookie quarterback. I think the Cardinals could just take it to the Patriots and just rebound and sort of save their season here. So I like Arizona quite a bit. So what do you think? What do you think of this?
I'm on the other side of that game.
Okay.
And like you were trying to sell me before on Tennessee, and I said you're making the same mistake that we've made all year with these dogs. Now I'm making the same mistake on the dogs, on these crappy dogs like New England, right? So, but here's my point in this game. First of all, obviously New England off the bye and the loss, right? So we like that a little bit better. They're certainly playing a little bit better. Arizona, 3 weeks ago, everyone's singing their praises. They're going in. Remember, they were dogs at Seattle, and they closed favorites. Everybody's betting Arizona in that game. I'm on Seattle in that game. This week, I actually thought Arizona was going to bounce back and win. Obviously, they didn't. And we talk about, well, if so-and-so happened, or if this happened, or Seattle's been better, their record could be whatever. Before that first Seattle game, when they were 6-4, and now, of course, they're 6-7, I said I don't look at Arizona like a 6-4 team. The Niners blew the game against them. They very easily could have lost to the Chargers, and they very easily could have lost to Miami. To me, those were 3 games that they won that they probably shouldn't have won. So that's 6-4 to me was more like a 3-7. Yes, give them credit for the Minnesota. They kicked a lot of field goals, which is a problem, obviously, and that's why they blew that game. But the reality is they got blown out in both Seattle games. They had no shot. Kyler was awful last week. So those 2 picks in a row on the second and third drive pretty much ended the game and probably ended their chances at a playoff spot. So maybe there's some demoralization there from them just kind of recognizing that now Seattle has a commanding divisional lead and they're behind the 8 ball. But to me, they're more like a 4-9 team, maybe a 5-8 team. I have them as a below average team. I have Miami slightly ahead of them, but I don't think Miami's that good either. And here, now you're asking them to lay 6 points. I mean, to me, if you're a 4-9, 5-8 type of team, and you're a below average team, I can't ask you to lay 6 points. I'm not surprised that the line moved down to 4.5. And now I'm kind of surprised that it moved back up towards 6. So someone has an opinion on, or maybe 2 different groups have opinions on this game that are moving this game significantly. The Patriots are a team that definitely has not quit. Now, they have gotten blown out a couple times. They got blown out in the Houston game. They almost won the Indy game. They played much better in that game. Obviously lost that game on a 2-point conversion. I think the backdoor is certainly possible in this game. I would not be surprised if New England won the game outright. Drake May has made some plays. I mean, their defense isn't very good. They don't have a lot of playmakers. And I'm not a Drake May fan. I wasn't a Drake May fan in college. I'm certainly not a fan of the coaching staff. But Kyler's not playing well. And now you're going to ask a team that to me is more like a 5-8 team laying 6 points. No thanks. So I'm on the Patriots here, and I highlighted this as a potential pick. I think this is a 3-point game. I think this is going to be like one of those like not a lot of touchdowns, more field goals than touchdowns, 26-23, something like that, 24-19, something in that 3-4 point ballpark. I like getting 6.
Okay, yeah, we differ here. I see this being more like the Miami at New England or New England Miami game where New England just got steamrolled against a superior opponent. Arizona has not played that way, but they've had their fair share of dominant wins at home. Like they crushed the Jets, they crushed the Bears. I think this could like playing an inferior opponent. I don't think there's any question. I think you would agree. New England's way worse than both Seattle and Minnesota. So,
for sure. I mean, yeah. I have New England at 28th. I'm way down. But I have the Cardinals at 18th. I have the Cardinals a half point worse than an average team, and New England -5.5. That makes it 5 on a neutral.
Interesting. I have Arizona at 18 as well, and I have New England at 26. So I'm actually closer with these teams than you are.
I have them 5 points difference, and I give Arizona maybe a point and a half. So that brings my line to like 6.5. I actually made the line 6. Personally, my computer made the line 6.
Mhm.
So I don't disagree with the number, but I can't lay points with that. That team to me is a 5-win team, maybe a 6-win team. I'm not impressed with Arizona. And Kyler, we've seen this late in the year before. He's just, the season catches up to him. Those picks last week, I get it. Seattle's playing better, and Seattle's certainly a better defense than New England, but they were awful in these 2 Seattle games. I just don't think they're a great team, and I'm asking them to lay points. Like I said, with Tennessee, we're both falling into the trap of taking the underdog. You with Tennessee, me with New England here.
Mm-hmm.
A live team that might be playing hard, where we want to take the points, and the favorites somehow, because the season is 2024, somehow these mediocre favorites are going to cover 6. But I'll fall into the trap again. That's fine. I'm not going to change my tune now all of a sudden. I mean, again, I'm 50. I'm a 500 picker this year, which is bad. But that's the way I handicap the game. I mean, I just don't trust Arizona. I'm not impressed with Arizona. To me, they're a below 500 team. You also agree they're a below average team. I can't lay 6 with a below average team. Yeah. And New England hasn't quit yet. They're not the Saints. They're not the Jaguars. They're not, the Giants. I think there's some fight in them.
Yeah, I wonder how New England stacks up against like these teams. I guess we differ on. It's essentially because we're both 18th on Arizona. I kind of think I moved them down a little too much, just overreacting to the Seattle games. I just think Seattle has their number, and like the Cardinals want to run the ball. Like they really want to run the ball and get the ball to McBride. And when they can't do that, it just feels like their whole offense is disrupted. And Seattle's been so great against the run. Minnesota's great against the run too. And like New England is awful against the run. Like one of the 3.
I have New England under 4.5 wins as a season futures bet.
Yeah, I have under 5. Yeah.
Yeah, it was 5. And all summer when I was away and I was looking at the line, it was 5. And then the Judon trade happened. Like, oh, shoot, I'm late to the window. I know this is kind of signaling that the team is not really caring about the season. And with the Judon trade, the line moved from 5 to 4.5. Mm-hmm. And I immediately bet it. And I was like annoyed that I got a bad number. I usually don't get a bad number like that, but I'm like, I got to bet this now. And I took the 4.5. And this is probably, in my opinion, the last game they can win, unless Buffalo is locked into a 2 seed and they don't play the last game of the season, because New England hasn't played Buffalo yet. They played Buffalo in week 16 and week 18, which is nuts. Yeah. So New England hasn't played Buffalo yet. And of course, they get a home game against the Chargers in between. So I actually, from my season's wins perspective, I need Arizona to win this game, and I'm not super confident. I think they will. I'm definitely not confident that they're going to cover. So I think New England is live. Really, it's the back door, because if they're behind, if they're down by 10 late in the game, 23-13, 24-14, something like that, I'm confident that May could make plays with his legs to get them in the back door. And 6 is too many points for me. So there we go. Listen, we'll talk next week, and we'll say, Cincinnati and Arizona won 27-17.
Right.
It's like, shame on us for just not falling into the trap.
Yes. So when you talked about the Patriots win total under, I was kind of curious, without looking, how many teams that are currently over 500 do you think the Patriots have played this year out of their 13 games?
Off the top of my head?
Yeah.
Out of 13 games, let's go with 5.
3.
3.
They're the 3 teams they played that currently are above 500: Seahawks, the Texans, and the Rams. They've had an easy schedule. The Bengals.
Well, let's be fair. They played the Niners when the Niners are a below 500 team now, but they're not a below average team.
Right. True.
They lost to Miami in a pathetic game,
where
Miami didn't have a quarterback in that game.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. They've played a lot of crap.
They played a lot. One of
the games that I look towards,
the
Rams game. Granted, they were at home. They lost by 6. They were in that game. I think they got into the back door in that game, but they were in that. Let me just quickly pop
It's
the score
four.
of that game.
It's 4.5. So the Rams covered.
They were down. They were down 14-10 at halftime. They were down 21-10 early third quarter. They were down 28-13 going into the fourth.
Yeah,
so there you go. The Rams pulled away. I remember because I had the Rams -4 in the game.
Yeah, me too.
Rams pulled away and then only lost by 6. So Rams didn't score in the fourth quarter. The game was 28-13. The Rams just sat on the ball. So I could see a similar situation here with this game. But like I said, this is the story of the season. It's these favorites that are covering these mediocre favorites covering middle lines. Someone said they got 5.5. I don't remember that being 5.5, but good for you. That's a good bet.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean it's pretty good here.
Unless you're laying like crazy juice, like -180 type of juice, then don't do that.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, if they lose this game, then those unders are looking pretty good because they have to play Buffalo twice.
I just worry about Buffalo's going to be resting week 18.
That's true. Yeah. All right. All right. Let's go to Sunday night game. We have Packers at Seahawks. The Packers are -3. And the look ahead was -3. I thought that, maybe with the Packers losing, now they did compose themselves well at Detroit, but with the Packers losing and the Seahawks winning pretty convincingly at Arizona, I thought maybe we get a 2.5 or a 2. This line has stuck to 3, just very stubbornly, just staying here. I forgot to mention this in the Charger game. So another reason to take the Chargers is that you have a really good coach coming off a loss. Jim Harbaugh, if you take out the 2014 season when he had one foot out the door in San Francisco, off a loss, he is 11-3 against the spread. Just makes sense to back a great coach coming off a loss. And I put Matt LaFleur in that category. LaFleur has been excellent as head coach of the Packers overall against the spread. I believe he is he's 56-39 against the spread, so he tends to win by margin more often than not, or at least cover. And off a loss, LaFleur is 18-11 against the spread, so I like the Packers to bounce back here. And I know like Seattle is looking so appealing because they beat Arizona twice, and the Jets, who almost just beat the Dolphins. But I just think that Seattle just had Arizona's number, whereas like the Packers I think they're a cut above Seattle. So I do like him here, but this line is just, man, I just wish we were getting a better number here. I still do like him at 3, and I kind of wonder if it's just like the books know that they're going to get a crap ton of sharp money on Green Bay if they move to 2.5. I think that's probably it. But I still like Green Bay, even though Seattle, their record is home underdog since 2009, since the Pete Carroll came in. It's 22-9 against the spread. Which is phenomenal. So tough to fade that, but I am doing that here. So what are your thoughts on this game?
I don't have many. So I have the Packers 7th at +3.5, and I have Seattle at 14th +1.5. So I have Green Bay quite a bit better, but I do give somewhat of an edge to the home field advantage for Seattle. I do give them 2 points, and therefore my line is closer to a pick'em. Now I actually made this line Green Bay -1.5. Now, if you like Green Bay, Circa right now has 2.5, and the Westgate has a 3. So it's going to be interesting to see where this line comes out from a contest perspective, because at 3, I lean to Seattle +3. At 2.5, I don't have any value. I don't see there's any value in the game. I don't like taking a team +2.5, but I do like taking the +3. I certainly think they're alive to win the game. Green Bay off the tough loss in Detroit, obviously with some extra rest. I was not impressed with them on third down. They were 1 for 5 on third down in the game against Detroit's banged up defense. They had trouble in pass protection, which is weird because they really hadn't been. They've been pretty good with pass protection throughout the season. Love hasn't been great. Love's made mistakes. He actually early in that game missed a wide open touchdown. I do like Seattle's passing attack. Seattle also had a great running performance this week, which is not something that I expected to happen, but that was something that was impressive. 6.7 yards per play, 7-15 on third down. That was impressive for Seattle. And now, Green Bay would qualify, obviously, you said, as one of the better teams that they've played. And I definitely agree with making them a short favorite. I just don't think 3 is the right number. So I lean towards Seattle getting 3. At 2.5, I have no opinion. I do like the night crowd. I think that could make a difference, especially in pass protection for Jordan Love. And Geno Smith, we said this a few weeks ago, the most come from behind wins in the fourth quarter or overtime in the last 2 years. So he's been really good. He's been good against good teams. Do I trust them to win this game? No, but I don't trust Green Bay to win this game either. So I think this is a good toss-up game. This is a good game for me to lay off of. Another fun game, Sunday Night Football to watch. I actually would lean towards Seattle at +3. So if you like the game and you're betting the game, find that 2.5 because it is available now.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So let's.
DraftKings also has a 2.5, by the way.
Okay. Is that what's the big one? Is it
18?
18. Okay. All right. All right. Let's get to the first of two Monday night games. I love these Monday night doubleheaders.
Yeah. Why are they at the same time?
Yeah, well, one's a half hour later, right? The Raiders starts at 8:30, which I like. That's 5:30 local time. So like, why wouldn't they just make that at 10 o'clock or 9:30?
That makes no sense. I was shocked when I saw the time on this game. I thought it was a mistake.
Right, make it 7:30, 9:30, or 8 and 10, or something like that. Like, there's no reason to start these half hour apart. It just makes no sense at all. I don't get it. And like, if they're worried about ratings, like they start games at 9:30 a.m. So like,
what are they? What channel are these games on?
It's a good question. I assume one's gonna be on ESPN, the other on ESPN2 or something. I don't know. Oh, maybe
one's on ABC, ESPN Plus, and the other on ESPN.
Okay, makes sense.
So they're putting games one against the other. It just that's. I don't have a problem with 2 Monday night games.
Yeah,
stagger the time, like 8, 9:30 at the very minimum.
Yeah, and Monday Night Football games used to start at 9 o'clock, so you could start one at 7 and start the other at 9, or 7:30 at 9, or 7:30, 9:30. Like they could do this, and like I said, they start games at 9:30 a.m. Like they could start games at 10 p.m. to cater to the West Coast crowd who gets screwed over in those 9:30 a.m. games. So, So I really hate that, but I do love the dual Monday night stuff, especially for DraftKings. I love the 2-game slate, which I won a 2-game slate last year, so maybe that's why. But we have Bears and Vikings. The Vikings are -7. It's really difficult for me to back the Bears here because they did exactly what the Jets did, where they fired their head coach, and instead of promoting an interim coach who either coach special teams or gave Gatorade to people, like that's the right move, and to let the offensive and defensive coordinators still do their job. They moved the offensive coordinator to interim head coach. So like now, the offensive coordinator, Thomas Brown, who was doing a good job with Caleb Williams. Like Williams had improved with Thomas Brown. Like now he's not focusing on the offense. He has other duties, and like now no one's coaching the offense. And so this is just asinine what the Bears did, because like we had a blueprint for this already. The Jets screwed it up with Ulbrich. Moving defense coordinator to the interim head coach is very stupid. So I can't back the Bears the rest of the year unless they're getting like an insane number of points or something against a team that's not that good. I just can't take them. So for me, I'm going to be on Minnesota. The Vikings were blowing them out in the first meeting until they kind of fell asleep at the wheel, and the Bears came back, and they had it was an onside kick recovery, I think, and then they went to overtime and they still lost. So they needed luck to get to overtime, and now this game's in Minnesota. I think the Vikings take it to them here. Now I am concerned about Minnesota not having Darisaw. Like they still haven't beaten a winning team without Darisaw, and they are either 6-0 or 5-0 without him. But still, they haven't beaten a winning team. But it's not like Chicago's a winning team, so I think they can win comfortably here. So what are your thoughts on this game?
Well, you took some of the words right out of my mouth when you talked about where Thomas Brown has been, because he goes from the booth calling plays to managing the game, which obviously didn't work. They've gotten blown out in the first half, yards-wise, last 2 weeks. And originally when I made the lines, and I saw the line open at 6.5, and I made the line 7, I'm like, I highlighted Minnesota as a possible pick. But upon really looking through the Bears games, I now am kind of torn. Minnesota, obviously, off the blowout win. The defense wasn't great. I mean, they benefited from 2 really poor Kirk Cousins picks. And then, of course, a kickoff, fumble on a kickoff. Darnold had some really poor underthrown balls that somehow ended up in Addison and Jefferson's hands for long touchdowns. So that was something kind of like kind of a fluky type of long touchdown situation. We just talked about the coaching situation with Chicago. Obviously, no wonder their offenses looked so bad. But maybe that's something that's easy for them to fix. Maybe they kind of recognize that. Maybe there's something that they can fix, going forwards. Obviously, versus a heavy pass rush at night in the dome is something that's going to be worrisome. Caleb Williams leads the league in sacks, in being in time sacked. I think he's been sacked 56 times is what I heard somewhere or read somewhere. And for the season, Chicago's got one of the worst offenses and one of the worst defenses. So, but when you look back at their schedule, last couple of games, they've played 3 divisional games. All 3 were close. They almost beat Green Bay, blocked field goal. Then they were getting blown out against Minnesota, as you pointed out. They fought back. Give them credit for fighting back. Yes, they needed the onside kick to ultimately potentially get that game tied and lose in overtime, but they did fight back. And Detroit, same idea. They were down big at halftime. Gibbs fumbled on the 5-yard line. They fought back. By the way, in the Minnesota game, Aaron Jones fumbled at the 1-yard line also. It's like first and goal from the 4 or second and goal from the 2. And Jones fumbled going in too. So they benefited from some luck, but then they still have to fight and compete. So will they fight and compete here when they're down big? I think they will. They lost these 3 divisional games close, and then they go to the Niners and they just get whacked. So, looking at the divisional games, maybe there's something to be said about their effort in these games. Maybe there's something to be said about the change in coaching philosophy with the play calling and whatnot. But I don't necessarily trust Sam Darnold to win by margin. I know they'll put 40 points, but a lot of those passes were just like punts that somehow landed in his receiver's hands. It was like Atlanta's looking up into the sky and can't believe where the ball is. Or maybe they lost the ball somewhere on some of these deep balls, but they certainly weren't good passes. They just found it to the receiver. So I really wanted to be on Minnesota. I love the home crowd at night situation against an offense that probably can't protect, or we know can't protect. But I don't trust that Minnesota can hold on, and I've seen Chicago fight through the back door. So while as originally I wanted to take them, I highlighted Minnesota. Now I'm kind of like, you know what? Maybe better laying off the game. There's a bunch of games that I like better. And I'm probably at 7, I'm probably not on this game.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I like this a little bit more. I don't know if it's gonna be a contest play, but this might be a small bet. All right. The other Monday night game, Falcons at the Raiders. This line is Falcons -4.5. Now, we don't really know who's going to play quarterback for either team this game. Could be Kirk Cousins, probably for Atlanta, but maybe Raheem Morris looks at the tape and decides to go with Michael Penix Jr. And then Aiden O'Connell got hurt last week, and I thought for sure it was going to be Desmond Ridder, but now it's sounding like Aiden O'Connell has a decent chance to play in this game.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Okay, yeah. From what I saw,
because I see the line now moving more towards Atlanta.
Okay, so maybe there was some news or something. From what I've heard, Aiden O'Connell is it had a good chance to play here. So let me see. So I'm seeing bone bruise 1 to 2 weeks, but quarterbacks more likely to play through. That's the medical doctor talking about that on Twitter. And I saw some other reports. Aiden O'Connell suffers bone bruise, will try to play in week 15 for Vic Tough 4. So according
because Ridder was announced as a starter.
Really? Yeah. Everything I'm seeing says that O'Connell has a chance to play in this game. So we'll see. It might be Ridder. I don't know. If this is O'Connell, I definitely like the Raiders. If you have like a backup quarterback caliber player against a defense that's terrible like Atlanta's. Now, Atlanta's pass rush has been better since the bye, I will say that, but still a bad defense. They allow a lot through the air. So I like the Raiders, especially like Atlanta's just terrible against tight ends. So it feels like Brock Bowers should have a great game. Bowers got hurt in that Raiders Buccaneers game. I think that was, one of the factors in the Raiders not covering. Like just they stopped scoring because Bowers got banged up. And I know he played late in the game, but he just wasn't 100%. If this is Desmond Ridder, that's a much worse quarterback than even Aiden O'Connell. So it's really tough to back a team with Ridder. But then again, like how do you lay 4.5 with Atlanta, just like this miserable team that can't stop anything? And you have a quarterback who throws the other team. Kirk Cousins looks like he's not healthy. Like the Raiders have quietly been better against the run. Now I don't really have much faith in them stopping Bijan Robinson, but they can like limit him a little bit. And so even if they do that, then I think they have a good chance to cover even with Ridder. So we'll see who the quarterbacks are in this game. But right now I'm leaning Raiders. So what do you think about this one?
For me, it's all about the quarterback because if you tell me it's O'Connell, I agree with you, and I'd be on the Raiders getting 4.5 points. If it's not O'Connell, I'm not, because Desmond Ridder is not an NFL quarterback. Revenge game against his old teammates. Yeah, he is awful. He is not even a backup quarterback. And if their yards per play last week between him and O'Connell, who was also pretty bad last week. I mean, they gave up 7.7 yards per play. And they only had 4.5 on offense. Sorry, they gave up 7.1 yards per play to Tampa. Tampa ran the ball all over them. They moved the ball at will. The offense was non-existent for the Raiders. Raiders now have a 9-game losing streak. Okay, and their average margin of defeat in these games is just under 12 points a game. Only one of those 9 games did they lose by less than 5 points. So they're a team that is constantly losing by margin. They've been down big most of those games and have maybe come back and lost by 7 or lost by 10. Ultimately, if Cousins doesn't throw the ball to the other team, which is a big if, or maybe he gets benched, and then maybe somebody else comes in and doesn't throw the ball to the other team. They moved the ball last week, Atlanta, and then he threw picks in the end zone twice. So at the end of the day, if I have Ritter and I have Cousins who doesn't throw the ball to the other team, I like the Falcons to win and cover by 7+ points. But if it is O'Connell, then all that goes out the window. And this game is, one of those 21-19, 20-19, back and forth field goal games. I like Carlson better than Koo from a kicking perspective, especially in the Dome in Vegas. So, again, it really comes down to the quarterback. But I'm not going to be on players like Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler. Not happening with the Saints. I have no desire to be on a player like Mac Jones, even though we said that they're good at the back door. I lean to the Jets. We talked about that earlier. Desmond Ritter's in the game. I'm on the other side. I don't care who they're playing, unless they're playing one of those other teams that have no quarterback. 4.5 is not enough. They're losing by 10+ points a game in the last 9 games. And like I said, only one time did they get within 5. Mm-hmm. So why am I going to try to get lucky here and bet them or pick them to be within 5, in the 10th game, where they're probably going to lose? By the way, we said a few weeks ago that there was value on Tampa Bay to win the division at plus money. Of course, Tampa Bay is now the favorite. We also said take Tampa Bay over 8.5 wins, which was a good bet. Atlanta is now in a must-win situation. Season's slipping away because of these last couple of games. So it's time for them to wake up. If Cousins is hurt, it's time to make quarterback change. I don't trust Raheem Morris. He hasn't been good, certainly. But this is more of a bet against Ritter and the Raiders than it is on anybody else. So I need to see who's playing quarterback. And Antonio Pierce announced that Ritter was starting. So I don't know what's going on there or what they're trying to show. But if that changes later in the week, I would probably lay off the game. Otherwise, I'm on Atlanta.
Okay, makes sense. It was the Buccaneers are what, like plus 140 or something to win the division a couple weeks ago. And now Atlanta's plus 180. So you could get both sides now at plus money. I guess just pray the Saints still come back and do it. not that they're going to.
No, I'm going to lay off the bet. I like my position on Tampa, and I also have Tampa over 8.5 wins, which I think is good.
Okay.
And that's why I'm more inclined to maybe bet Atlanta in a game like this, or play Atlanta in some capacity, because I'm already on the other team. So I don't mind if Atlanta, and I could certainly see Atlanta winning and Tampa Bay losing, and then that flips. But from a schedule perspective, Atlanta. Well, actually, maybe I should take Atlanta to win the division now, because they play the Giants next at home.
Yeah, they have the Raider game.
Then they go at Washington, so that's their dogs in that game. They play Carolina at home to close, and Tampa plays at Dallas next week, and then Carolina, New Orleans. So both of these teams, I think both of these teams probably finish 3-1 down the stretch, and I like Tampa to obviously with their if they finished both 3-1, then Tampa would win the division. So. Yeah, I will probably let my bet ride, but for me, it's about Ritter. If Ritter's playing, I bet against him. I'm very happy to bet against him.
Okay, yeah, for sure. My line, I suppose Rubicant will be next week. Oh no, not yet. You gotta. Rubicant came much later. He was the fourth of the 4 feet. So remember, Cognazzo was the second one, but there was someone in between, Chris. Sure, most people have no idea what we're talking about here. What you'll see in the conversation, in my Monday night conversation, it's not going to be Cognazzo either. So you'll have to stay tuned for next week. All right, that's we went through 16 games. We have no buys left, so we have nothing but 16 game slates to close out the season in this four-week run here at the end, which is going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully, a lot of fun. Hopefully, we don't have like bad beats and bad calls like we did last week. So I like this card a lot more. To echo what you said, I'm more confident in the games this week. So hopefully, the results reflect that. So any final?
Maybe I talked you out of picking Tennessee. Maybe you talked me out of taking the Patriots, because those are the teams that historically have been great. If you're a contest player for years, those are the bread and butter. Those road crappy teams getting 3.5 to 6.5 points. Those are the teams that are hitting like 30% on the season. So
that's true.
So you know what? We fall into the traps. I like this card a lot better than last week for sure.
Okay.
So, and I would again look for the FanDuel specials. They're there every single week. I haven't found them yet. Haven't looked for them yet. They are there. You can look for same game parlays in game. The weekly specials are mispriced. There's so many opportunities because these books, they're putting out things for activity. There's no one really checking the odds. There's mathematical advantages you could take. So they're there. You just got to find them. You don't have to bet Detroit Buffalo, although you should bet the over. You don't have to pick a side in that game. You can go to find the same game parlay with both quarterbacks to combine for 4 touchdowns or 6 touchdowns and get 10-1, and Josh Allen might get it for you himself. Like, there's just a lot of ways to attack the card without picking a winner with a spread that's a half a point either way that you're going to get lucky. So find those advantages, find the lines, find the good lines. Like you like Miami, get yourself a +3.
Mm-hmm.
You like if you like the Texans, obviously you're looking at 2.5. Same thing with the Rams-Niner game. Same thing with the Bills-Lions game. Same thing with Packers-Seahawks. If you like the side, shame on you if you're not getting the best number.
Yeah, and don't just get the best number. Take advantage of these promos. I have this link here on the homepage, best sportsbook promos. Like if you're not signed up for these accounts, like we have Fanatics, that's new. So yeah, I mean, sign up for these things. You get bonus bets. Like it's a great way to make up for the vig, which you pay for. So and these sports books have promos almost every day. So definitely log in each day and see if there's a profit boost or something, or a bonus bet opportunity. Like make sure you take advantage of this stuff. I can't stress this enough. So yeah. So definitely sign up.
Next week you get to start looking at the NFL ESPN playoff machine, which is a lot of fun.
Yep, I've spent so many hours on that. So
not yet. I mean, we're a little far away.
I meant through the years. Not now. Yeah. I'm not crazy enough yet.
You're going through 8,000 permutations.
Yeah, you can't do that yet. But no, through the years, I've spent way too much time on that site for sure.
I think next week is when we can start.
Yes, I agree. Do the Giants have any chance of an upset over the Ravens?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, if their bus gets lost to the stadium, yeah, they could lose. But look, these are professionals. Anything can happen.
What's the money line? Because I know somebody put $3 million on the money line last week.
Yeah, that was funny. So many people made a big deal out of that. I'm like, they're only liable for $440,000, really. Like, I mean,
by the way, so just so you know, so Circa took the bet, and they were going crazy looking for action on the other side because they need to somewhat balance the books, right?
Right.
They went as high as, I'll tell you what they did. Hold on 1 second. Give me 1 second, because they went really high at some point.
Well, while you look at that, I'll point out that the Ravens are minus 1,400 on the money line. So
because I just saw minus 1,300. Okay,
yeah, I'm always looking at FanDuel. So, yeah, if you like the Ravens, it's minus 1,400. So, theoretically, if let me go to another sports book. If someone wanted to bet, actually no, that's weird. DraftKings, the money line for the Ravens is minus 950. So that's quite the difference.
Okay, because they took the bet at minus 700. So it wasn't minus 1,300. It was minus 700, right?
Okay.
And then they were offering back. At one point, it was like plus 690, and they kept moving the number. And I want to see where they eventually, because I know somebody posted their top number on it. Oh shoot! Now I can't find it. It was like crazy.
So if you bet 3.1 million on the Ravens this week, you get back 326,000. Which
326,000.
yeah, at minus 950. At minus 1,400, obviously much worse. But on DraftKings, like I said, you get minus 950. I don't think DraftKings will let you bet 3.1 million. By the way,
Yeah, it was a $440,000 liability, and
yeah,
I'm pretty sure they went up to like 8-1,
yeah, okay.
somewhere in the plus 800 range because they really needed some buyback at Circa.
Couldn't
And I
they
do
just bet that
know
themselves?
what?
Couldn't they just bet that themselves?
Couldn't they bet that themselves?
Yeah,
Like go to another sports book and just lay off some of the money?
yeah.
I don't know how that works legally in the state of Nevada,
Okay.
but I do know a group that took some back at like 8-1.
Okay.
I played Carolina plus 1430
Did you?
before the last drive or the drive before. But granted, I only did that because I had a lot of money on the Eagles to win, tied to some other bets from the weekend, from the college football weekend, and kind of used Philly money line. I don't know why. Very stupid. But I had liability on that game, and then I ended up playing in game plus 7.5 on Carolina, and I got plus 1430. I did see as high as 15-1. I got a plus 14-1, and I actually late in the game, I didn't want them to win because it would have cost me winnings, but I covered myself in a way. So look for in game. You're just so much better off.
Yeah, that's true. But will it be Valvalis? It's not going to be Valvalis yet. Not yet. Not yet. There's Valvalis is after Cognazzo. So again, no one knows what we're talking about. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching and commenting. Really appreciate it. Thanks especially to Dro for show for the $4.99 super chat. Thank you so much, Joe. Just it means so much. Like these YouTube ads pay nothing, so this really helps a lot. All right, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. Evan, great show as always with you. Any final thoughts on the way out, or are we heading out?
I think we're good. I think we hit it all.
Okay, Steven said they took a $150,000 bet on Carolina money line. They actually needed Philly to win. Is that true?
If that's true, then that happened right before kickoff because that line went up to over 8-1.
Okay. All right, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with Kenny doing the fantasy football rundown. So if you have any fantasy questions, save them for tomorrow. We'll answer them. Thursday, Andy Isco will be back. So we'll be doing that right after the Thursday night game, 15, 20 minutes afterward. And then Saturday, we'll be back with Quacky for our final thoughts here on the show. So, yeah, guys, once again, thank you so much for watching. Yeah, great show, Evan. Like I said, I really look forward to these Tuesday nights to talk the weekly picks with you. So, all right, guys, have a great night, and we'll talk to you later.